Chapter 30:20. The poison in Nangong Yu's body had been completely purged, and his condition was slightly better. He stood up with difficulty and walked toward Zhao Yunbu in a trembling manner. If it weren't for all the things that had happened, Nangong Yu would never believe that this friend of hers who had gone through thick and thin together with her had a purpose in mind. Furthermore, he was planning to overthrow the entire Nangong city. This person's ambition could only be described as extremely huge. Consider yourself lucky to have won this time. But so what? So what if you've won? Shimin Cheng is no match for you. Zhao Yunbu burst out laughing. There was no need for him to beg for mercy now, as he would surely die. Therefore, Zhao Yunbu felt that he should die with a strong will. Nangong Yu let out a smile. Since Shimin Cheng dared to make a move, it was obvious that they were prepared. However, now that they were aware of the situation, it was a completely different matter compared to their previous lack of preparation. I don't know why you're so confident that the people of Shimincheng would give you Nangong City. Your ambition has really gone to your head. Nangong, you looked at him with pity and said, although Nangong City was the weakest among the 4 cities, it was still a city. Many cultivators who traveled here would settle down there. Therefore, the income of Nangong City had always been impressive. If Shimincheng were to take it down, would they really give this piece of fat meat to Zhao Yunbu? It was ridiculous to even think about it, as it was impossible. Others might not understand, but how could Nangong Yu not know? Zhao Yunbu said coldly, I've said it before, the Shimin clan leader's mindset is different from yours. You're just a pitiful worm trying to protect your ancestral land. A piece of trash without any ambition. Nangong Yu laughed. He had no ambition? Wasn't Nangong Yu the same in the past? However, as the situation developed, would the 2 giants above allow them to have a smooth sailing? Besides, Nangong City was right next to the Cursed God sect. If they were to display their ambition, who could guarantee that the Cursed God sect would not punish them? The forces in the bright curse realm were complicated, but the benefits had already been divided. If one were to try to obtain more, it would more or less harm the benefits of others. How would the conflict be resolved when the time came? However, there was no need to continue saying these things to a person who was about to die. No matter how much he said, he was already possessed and wouldn't listen at all. If you have any last words, quickly say them. I'll give you a quick death. Nangong Yu shook her head. Zhao Yunfu, on the other hand, was very disdainful. I only lost to Xiaoyang, not you. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Why do you need to waste your breath? You want to know anything from my mouth? Impossible. Nangong Yu shook her head, helplessly. This fellow was still as stubborn as ever. Xiaoyang didn't look over and continued to treat everyone. Although they could force the poison out of their bodies, it would take a long time. By then, the damage to their bodies might be irreversible. Back then, I failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. Please forgive me, Nangong Xiao said awkwardly. Previously, he had been so arrogant in front of Xiaoyang. Even after the city lord's introduction, he still didn't put him in his eyes. Those who don't know can't be blamed, Xiaoyang said calmly. Nangong Yong, who was at the side, smiled gently. In his opinion, this was the best outcome. Nangong Qing didn't suffer too many losses. Everything was reversed. Benefactor, how did you see through it? Nangong Yong asked curiously. Although their cultivation levels were about the same, the strength they displayed was worlds apart. Therefore, Nangong Yong admired him greatly. Xiao Yang's expression remained cold as he said, I've said it before, it's just business. I'm not your benefactor. Nangong Xiao and Nangong Yong were speechless again. They didn't know how to respond. After removing the poison from their bodies, Xiao Yang walked toward Sun Yi. Chief Sun Yi's eyes are like torches. How did you see through it? Xiao Yang asked softly. Sun Yi smiled bitterly and said, I've been tricked by others before, so I've become cautious. I'm willing to observe and think about everything. I'm not easily involved, so I'm naturally able to notice the difference. However, I didn't expect it to be Cultivator Xiao. As for today's situation, it was completely unexpected. Sun Yi only felt that something was wrong. Xiao Yang let out a smile and said, "It seems like Chief Sun Yi is disheartened, so he wants to rely on Nangongcheng." Sun Yi didn't deny it. He did have such thoughts, which was why he kept a low profile. At his age, there was no need for him to stir up trouble. Unfortunately, you've already joined Nangongcheng. It's not convenient for me to poach you. Xiao Yang said calmly. Sun Yi was indeed a Buddhist, but he still had his bottom line. Of course, he was clear-headed too. He would look at things from an outsider's perspective. Therefore, from his perspective, he was able to see things that were difficult to be discovered. Sun Yi only let out a calm smile in response. Although the other party was trying to recruit him, they both knew that it was too late. It was fine to rely on Nangongcheng. There was no need for him to move, as it would bring him a bad reputation. Besides, Nangongcheng was quite nice to him. It seems like Cultivator Zhao's faction is not simple. Sun Yi said with a smile. Xiao Yang shook his head and said, "It might be 100 years later." It would take a long time for the drifting cloud boundary to grow. Sun Yi was startled for a moment before he stopped asking. Even at this stage, Sun Yi was still cautious. He knew what he should know, and he wouldn't ask if the other party didn't tell him first. Meanwhile, the elders who betrayed Nangongcheng were kneeling on the ground. "City Lord, we were all threatened by that son of a bitch, Zhao Yunbu. We had no choice but to submit to him in order to survive. Our purpose was to survive and spread the news, so that the truth wouldn't be buried in the secret ground." At that instant, those people began to beg for mercy shamelessly. They said all the reasons they could think of. Nangong Yu only smiled indifferently. She remembered all the people who were willing to follow Zhao Yunbu back then. "I know. It's my fault for not telling you all about it. However, after this, I won't pursue it further," Nangong Yu said with a smile. As soon as these words came out, everyone was somewhat dumbfounded. Nangong Yu had her own temperament. If she were to kill all of them, it would be too domineering. Besides, they had all contributed to Nangongcheng. She couldn't just kill all of them because of this. Their contributions would offset their faults. However, before I talk to Shimincheng, please stay put, or else you will have to bear the consequences. Nangong Yu's tone turned cold all of a sudden. Chapter 30:21. Since this matter had been completely exposed, the elders present were all in danger. Because they had chosen the wrong side, their previous actions were no different from betraying the city. Everyone's hearts were filled with fear. If Nangong Yu were to start cleaning up her old debts, then their lives would be in danger. Therefore, in order to survive, they had no choice but to kneel and beg for mercy. This seemed to be the only way. Nangong Yu was also very clear that it was unrealistic to kill all of them. Furthermore, they had previously contributed to Nangong City. It would be unreasonable to kill them. Furthermore, they had only agreed and did not take any action. However, once these people left and spread the news, they would lose the initiative. Who knows? Westgate City might even come up with a new plan to deal with them. When that time comes, the situation would become even worse. Therefore, these people could not be allowed to take even half a step out of this place. Once this news was leaked, the consequences would be unimaginable. City Lord, we were all coerced. Some elders and consecrators did not give up and continued to quibble. They all wanted to live, but the only choice they could make was to do their best to beg. Only in this way could they have a way out. Nangong, you coldly stared at them. These people were not like this before. Even if she did not kill them, Nangong City would not dare to use them in the future. After all, these people had betrayed the city the first time. If there were any problems in the future, they would inevitably make the same choice. Everyone, stay here and don't do anything. You will be safe. If you dare to spread the news, don't blame me for being merciless. Nangong, you coldly said. Nangong Yu's patience had been completely worn out. Furthermore, there was no need for her to be merciful with these people. Seeing this, the crowd did not dare to continue speaking. Nangong Yu had not completely exploded yet, so they could only retreat. After all, this was an internal matter of Nangong City. As an outsider, Xiaoyang naturally did not have the need to interfere. After curing the poison, he stood aside and watched the show. After all, it was Nangong Yu's problem to deal with. It did not have much to do with him. Now that this matter was over, what Xiaoyang should do next was what he had to consider. After all, there were still many opportunities in this secret realm. If he could find one or two of them, he would benefit greatly. After a short while, Nangong Yu had finished dealing with the situation and left. As for those who had clearly pledged their allegiance to Zhao Yunque, they were all imprisoned by him and were not allowed to leave. Even the elders who didn't speak were forbidden from leaving this place. After all, this matter concerned the life and death of Nangong Cheng. How could Nangong Yu be careless? At the same time, Nangong Yu felt extremely helpless in her heart. She had never thought that such a huge city like Nangong City would be infiltrated by Zhao Yun in just a few decades, causing many people to have a change of heart. The most important reason for that was because the city lord trusted Zhao Yunbo too much and had given him too much authority. Otherwise, in that sort of situation, there would likely still be people who would step forward. As long as it was Sun Yi, Nangong Yu would only give a few words of praise and nothing more. Nangong Yu had always been on guard against this person. Even if he had taken the initiative to step forward in the previous situation, she still couldn't completely trust him. Sun Yi was too low-key. Furthermore, he was also very sensitive when it came to protecting himself. Such a person would either not take action, or once he did, the consequences would be extremely terrifying. Zhao Yunque's character was extremely radical. Once he saw benefits, he would lose his rationality and disregard everything else. Such a flaw was extremely obvious. However, Sun Yi was different. He planned before taking action. If he didn't have sufficient confidence, he would probably continue to remain silent. Sun Yi didn't mind this. After all, he felt that he was just waiting for death to come. Sometimes he would help when he needed to, that was all. Why wouldn't he be happy to be able to have some free time? Nangong Yu quickly walked in front of Xiaoyang and cupped her hands in respect, saying, "This time, thank you for your righteousness, Brother Xiao, for saving Nangong Yu and many of our clansmen." Nangong Yu was very clear in her heart. This time, she was indeed a little radical. It could even be said that she had gone overboard. If it weren't for Xiao Yang's efforts to turn the tide, they would probably have died here without a future. Xiao Yang smiled calmly and said, "It's just business. Don't mention it." For a moment, even Nangong Yu was speechless. Xiao Yang was truly a one-track mind, leaving her speechless. Nangong Xiao and Nangong Yong covered their mouths and laughed secretly. Although it was still business, they still remembered the benefits in their hearts. For the sake of the entry badge, they had already done enough. Nangong Yu smiled and nodded her head. She also understood that Xiaoyang had made such a clear distinction between the two parties, so that they wouldn't have to worry about each other's feelings. This person was so principled. He was also someone worth befriending. However, Xiaoyang's actions just now were equivalent to saving the entire Nangong City. If Nangong Yu were to really die here today, and most of the elders and consecrators were to betray them, when the army of Westgate City arrives, the remaining cultivators of Nangong City in the Cloud Valley would probably be doomed. Cultivator Xiao, please capture Zhao Yunfu's divine sense and see when Shimin City is planning to make their move. Nangong Yu requested. Xiaoyang nodded his head and said, "No problem." Then Xiaoyang walked over and performed a hand seal, beginning to capture the divine sense. If they could obtain some information from Zhao Yunfu's divine sense, Nangong City would be able to come up with a plan. Perhaps they still had a chance to turn the tables even when they were at a disadvantage. Previously, Xiaoyang had learned from Zhang Xuanji that Shimin City's reinforcements were relatively powerful. With Nangong City's current strength, it would be quite difficult for them to fight against the reinforcements. In fact, it could be said that it was almost impossible. It would be difficult to deal with the situation once the situation came crashing down. However, if they were able to obtain information about the enemy, it was not impossible for them to fight against the enemy. Nangong Yu had the same concern too. At the same time, she felt extremely fortunate that Xiaoyang had come to their Nangong City in order to obtain the entry badge. Or else, the Nangong City that their ancestors had built up would be destroyed in a short period of time. He would then become the Lord of Destruction, a mark on the family tree, and a sinner for all eternity. He would be despised and hated by the future generations. Chapter 3022. After capturing Zhao Yunfu's soul, Nangong Yu gave the only tent that was still intact after the battle to Xiaoyang, allowing him to check it out. The battle with Shimin City had come to an end. However, Nangong City's camp had been greatly damaged during the battle, making it difficult for people to live there. However, this was not a big problem for the people of Nangong City. After all, this was only a place to stay, and they did not need to spend too much effort on it. All they needed to do was to build it. However, they still needed to clean up this mess. There were many details that needed to be arranged, and nothing could be missed out. Although Zhao Yunfu's poisonous stinger had been completely removed, this was only the beginning. Shimin City was now a huge force, and it would be difficult for them to fight against them. Therefore, Nangong Yu had to be careful with every step she took. Once something went wrong, the consequences would be extremely terrifying. Furthermore, with Zhao Yunfu's death, Nangong City's strength had been weakened. A 7th-level martial royal realm expert still had a lot of weight. This was the reason why one side was weakened while the other side was strengthened. Another thing was, she still did not know how much help Shimin City had. With so many things in mind, Nangong Yu's mind was in a mess. It was not that she did not have the ability, but that she did not know much, which was why she could not come up with a plan. If it was only the strength that Shimin City displayed on the surface, Nangong Yu was naturally aware of it, and she already had countless plans in mind to help Nangong City overcome this obstacle. However, those outsiders who had never appeared in the bright curse realm were the real variables. She did not know how many of them there were and how strong they were. Without knowing anything, the response she made was all defensive, and there was a high possibility of mistakes in her arrangements. Shimin City had been plotting for over 10 years, and with the opening of the Bright Day Secret Realm, they probably had the intention to destroy Nangong City. They were extremely determined, or else, how could Zhao Yunfu make the decision to attack on his own? From the fact that Zhao Yunfu was able to take out the poisonous spirit banner, it could be seen that those outsiders had all kinds of strange tricks up their sleeves, which were impossible to defend against. When the time came, if they were to fight, they would only pay a heavy price. They might even die. Now that the majority of Nangong City's strength was in the Cloud Valley, it was not as if they did not have the ability to fight back. However, if that were to happen, many powerful cultivators would be killed, and Nangong Cheng would not be able to recover from the setback until he was completely wiped out. As the current ruler of Nangong City, Nangong Yu's heart was extremely uncomfortable. It seemed that no matter how one looked at it, they were in a completely passive and weak position. At the same time, he could only place his hopes on Xiaoyang, hoping that this fellow Taoist could bring him a pleasant surprise, or even help Nangong Cheng escape from this deadly situation. With regards to this mysterious young man, Nangong Yu thought highly of him. He had killed Zhao Yunfu without expending much effort. Just this fact alone was enough to make people look at him in a new light. Of course, Nangong Yu was also clear that Xiao Yang's attainments in the Poison Dao were of great help. However, this did not negate his strength. Another point was that Xiao Yang was a sincere person. He was able to explain everything clearly, and once he agreed to something, he would definitely not go back on his words. Regarding this, Nangong Yu could only sigh. If the Nangong clan could produce such a person, then their rise would be inevitable. Even if they could not be compared to the two ancient sects, it would not be a problem for them to squeeze into the three sections. To Xiaoyang, the commotion outside did not seem to have much to do with him. As such, Xiaoyang began to use the soul-searching technique in the tent to investigate Zhao Yunfu's divine soul. As the person who carried out the plan, Zhao Yunfu naturally knew more than the person who was tasked to protect a piece of trash. Xiaoyang, how dare you pull my divine soul into your sea of consciousness? Zhao Yunfu suddenly laughed out loud. As one's cultivation level increased, the divine soul would also become stronger. Xiaoyang did not pay attention to Zhao Yunfu and directly pressed him down with a slap, preventing him from causing any more trouble. Xiaoyang's divine soul had experienced countless turbulence. Because of the soul-searching technique, he had even swallowed the divine souls of many people. Under such growth, compared to Zhao Yunfu, it was unknown how much stronger he was. After being pressed down, Zhao Yunfu felt the power of his divine soul constantly flowing away. He immediately screamed in horror. With Zhao Yunfu's current cultivation level, although he was already dead, his divine soul still existed. There was a chance for him to seize another body and be reborn. However, Xiaoyang's action had completely cut off his chance of being a human. No matter how Zhao Yunfu begged or cursed, he did not pay attention. Although there were some questions that could be asked, Zhao Yunfu might hide some of them. However, there would be no problem if Zhao Yunfu directly took his divine soul. Xiao Man stood to the side with the origin mysterious spear in her hand and the mountain river map on her back. If there were any unexpected situations, she had the ability to protect her young master. Although it was difficult to compete with him, it was not a problem to keep her and her young master in the mountain river map. After about an hour, Xiaoyang slowly opened his eyes. By now, he had already familiarized himself with most of Zhao Yunfu's knowledge. There were still many details, but he still needed time to uncover them. However, it was enough to know the gist of some things. "Young master, how is the situation?" Xiao Man asked curiously. Seeing that the young master's breathing had stabilized, the injuries from before must have completely healed. There was no need to continue worrying. Xiaoyang helplessly shook his head and said, "Nangong Cheng's current situation is indeed not good." Lil Man smiled because to them this seemed to be a bit unnecessary, so they quickly took it. It was not that they did not want to help, but if they were to get involved, they would probably offend more people in the Bright Curse realm. In the end, they were only here for a visit. There was no need for them to get involved in other people's disputes. Favors were favors, not to mention the fact that their previous conditions had been settled. They did not owe each other anything. Therefore, there was no need for them to stay any longer. The more they came into contact with, the deeper they would be in. Xiaoyang could only bitterly smile and shake his head. Life was not as it should be. Cultivator Xiao, is it convenient? Chapter 30:23. From the sound of her voice, it was obvious that Nangongyu had just finished dealing with some matters. The reason why Nangongyu was here was self-evident. Everyone was well aware of it. The problem that Nangong City was facing right now was rather big. It might even be in danger of being destroyed. Therefore, as the city lord, how could he not be worried at all? "Come in," Xiaoyang said calmly. Nangongyu acknowledged and walked in. Although her expression seemed to have calmed down a lot, the previous troubles still made her, the city lord, very uncomfortable. Xiao Man sat at the side and poured tea, not even looking at this guest. Now that Xiaoyang was sitting here, he looked like the host. It was as if Nangongyu was the guest. City Lord Nangong is amazing. You managed to deal with the matter so quickly? Xiaoyang asked with a smile. Nangongyu had a gloomy expression and said, "I am not good at judging people. I have embarrassed myself in front of you. Nangong, you could not be blamed for this. After all, she and Zhao Yunfu had gone through life and death together. However, she did not know that the other party was just setting up a trap. She wanted him to lead the Nangong clan into the trap step by step. Fortunately, Xiao Yang's appearance allowed him to discover some details. That was how he managed to settle the matter. Otherwise, he would only be able to regain his senses on the day of his death. At that time, it would be too late for regrets, and he could only wait for death. When it comes to scheming, it's impossible to guard against it. Now that Zhao Yunfu has been caught, shall I take out the heart-devouring cicada for you? Xiao Yang asked with a smile. The heart-devouring cicada was an extremely potent poison. If it were to remain in Nangong Yu's heart, it would only cause harm to her. However, if it were to fall into Xiao Yang's hands, then the situation would change. Nangong Yu waved her hand casually and said, "Don't worry about this. What news did you get from Zhao Yunfu?" Nangong Yu felt that other matters could be put aside for now. However, the life and death of Nangong City was the most important thing. Furthermore, they could not afford to be careless. How could a foundation that had been built up over tens of thousands of years be destroyed in his hands? Even if she had to rack her brains, Nangong Yu had to ensure that she would not become a sinner in her family. Under normal circumstances, Nangong Cheng would not be afraid of Shimin Cheng. However, the other party was extremely ambitious and had recruited quite a number of henchmen, not to mention that he had a variety of tricks up his sleeves, making it hard to defend against him. Furthermore, their Nangong city was in a passive position, and no one knew when a great disaster would befall them. When that time came, the situation would be extremely bad. If Nangong Yu could think of a better way to deal with this situation, she would naturally not have made this trip. Although Nangong Yu also thought about allying with other two cities to resist Westgate City. That way they would be very confident. But would other two city lords listen to Nangong Yu's groundless talk? When there were no signs of the matter leaking out, no one would easily make a move. Moreover, even if it was confirmed, they didn't know how terrifying Shimin City was. In fact, they might even be happy to see it happen. You guys can just fight, and when the time comes, they can be the fisherman who cleans up the mess. Sometimes, people's schemes were just so terrifying. For the sake of benefits, what wouldn't they do? Furthermore, they did not know when Shimin Cheng would make their move, so they could only limit their forces to resist. As for what would happen in the future, that was a matter for the future. Whether they could survive the current situation was still unknown. Shimin Cheng is indeed willing to go all out. This poisonous spirit banner is the famous weapon of one of their experts. The reason why they gave it to him is so that he can use it to suppress you guys before the war starts. This way, their losses will be greatly reduced. Xiao Yang calmly said, "It was fortunate that Zhao Yunfu was eager for quick success. Otherwise, when the time came and Shimin Cheng's army came, it would be difficult for Nangong Cheng to make a comeback." Nangong Yu could only smile bitterly. At the same time, she was very curious whether Shimin Cheng had any evidence against them. Otherwise, why would Zhao Yunfu be so crazy? Nangong Yu would definitely not believe that Nangong Cheng would be handed over to Zhao Yunfu. After all, Nangong Cheng was a huge city, and the profits it could generate were extraordinary. Zhao Yunfu has a jade pendant that can be used to communicate with Shimin Cheng. The activation of the poisonous spirit banner is their signal to attack. Xiao Yang took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Sometimes one's personality was very important. Just like Zhao Yunfu, he had ruined everything in the end." Nangong Yu nodded. She understood this point as well. If she had not grasped Zhao Yunfu's bait, anyone with a brain would not have been fooled. According to the agreed time, in less than 5 days, Shimin Cheng's army will arrive. Xiao Yang said in a low voice, although there was no day or night in the daylight secret realm, as long as one was a little careful, one could still accurately calculate the time. Nangong Yu's eyebrows were tightly knitted together. It seemed that it would be very difficult to make appropriate arrangements in these 5 days. If they really could not do it, then should they leave Yungu? Abandoning Yungu was abandoning the land to save the people. If they were to defend this place to the death, they would lose both the people and the land. Then, Xiaoyang continued to tell Nangongyu about the situation at Shimencheng's side. This time, Shimencheng had found 2 rather powerful sects from 2 worlds as external aid. As for what price they had paid, no one knew. However, in the end, there were only a few possibilities. Shimencheng would help them take root in the Bright Curse realm. One side was the Xianxue sect, the sect that Lu Xinyu belonged to. It was rumored that their sect master had personally come this time as well. He was one of the best among the 7th level, and his battle prowess was extremely strong. The other side was the 10,000 Poison sect. Although their battle prowess was not strong, they had extraordinary attainments in the art of venomous insects. The heart-devouring cicada was their handiwork, and the poisonous spirit banner was one of their sect protection artifacts. Since they had even taken out the poisonous spirit banner, it could be seen how much the 10,000 Poison sect had invested. Hearing Xiaoyang's words, Nangongyu's eyebrows knitted together even more tightly. Although Zhao Yunbu knew a little more than Zhang Xuanji, he did not come into contact with much of the core. After all, he was only one person who had invested. Furthermore, he had the intention of being a subordinate of Shimencheng. Hence, he only knew a little. He was naturally clear about the areas that required cooperation. However, he knew very little about the rest. Nangongyu's face was filled with worry. What should they do if this continued? I wonder if fellow Xiao is willing to discuss another deal. Nangongyu took a deep breath and asked solemnly. Chapter 30:24. From Nangongyu's perspective, the only person she could trust now was this young man in front of her. Although she did not know if their participation could change the situation, based on what had happened previously, his strength and intelligence were worthy of recognition. Of course, one more thing was that Xiaoyang had the soul-searching technique. With that, he would have a better understanding of Shimen City's situation. Hence, it would not be a problem to deal with them. Xiaoyang was a trustworthy businessman. Once he agreed to something, he would definitely do it. This fact was very reassuring. As for using the so-called favor to get Xiaoyang to help her, Nangongyu felt that it was indeed too much. Their previous business deal could be said to have been settled, and it was reasonable for them to do the same now. Furthermore, Nangongyu also had other thoughts. If Xiaoyang agreed, it would mean that they still had a chance to fight with Shimen City. Thus, it was not a bad idea to have a fight. After all, Shimen City had already come to this point. Naturally, he had to vent his anger. If Xiaoyang rejected it, it would mean that they did not have a high chance of winning. If they continued to fight, they would not gain any benefits. Perhaps all of them would die here. That would be a very bad solution. What kind of business deal? Xiaoyang smiled calmly. If everything was within a reasonable range, Xiaoyang could still accept it. After all, many of the things involved were not impossible. These things would have to be decided based on the situation. Xiao Man sat at the side and continued to serve tea to the 2. Regarding this matter, she would not say anything more. Young master could make the decision. Why should she overthink? As long as Cultivator Xiao is willing to help Nangong City overcome this crisis, I'm willing to exchange my wealth. Nangongyu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. After hearing this, Xiaoyang frowned slightly. He liked the way she said it. A business deal was still feasible. If the other party's conditions were reasonable, he could accept it. Just say it. Xiaoyang smiled. Many of the things that were said now were relatively vague. If they were not put into practice, it would be hard to say. Although Nangongyu did not seem like a person who would go back on her words, there were still some accounts that had to be settled clearly. Firstly, every time the mystical ground is opened, our Nangong City will give away 3 spots. As long as Cultivator Zhao's men are here, they can enter with a badge. Nangongyu said in a deep tone. Xiaoyang nodded. This condition was quite good. After all, if these 3 fortunes were given to some people in the Flowing Cloud realm, they might undergo a qualitative change. However, this was a long-term statement. After all, the opening time of the Daylight Secret Realm was uncertain. The time between each opening was also very long. Moreover, time was uncertain to begin with. The longest interval was more than 3,000 years, and the shortest interval was more than 20 years. In this way, there were too many uncertainties. It was fine in the long run, but in the short run, there wouldn't be many benefits. In the future, if Cultivator Zhao's men come to the Bright Curse realm to train, they just need to inform us. As long as it's within our capabilities, we will help to solve it. Nangong Yu said. Xiao Yang smiled. This was quite a good condition as a prerequisite. Besides, Nangong Yu was not lying. There were indeed a few factions that were stronger than the Nangong city. It was fine for them to solve the problems within their capabilities. Now that the flowing cloud realm had opened its doors, many geniuses had started to head out to train. It was not impossible for them to travel to the Bright Curse realm in the future. This is my deposit. There are still some things behind it. However, I can only take them out after I return. Right now, I only have these on me. Nangong Yu said. At the same time, she took out a ring and handed it to Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang took it and did not show any carelessness. He immediately inserted his divine sense into the ring to check what was inside. At that instant, Xiao Yang's expression changed slightly. What he saw was a small mountain of spiritual stones. Among them, there were quite a number of heaven-level magic weapons, which were also piled up into a mountain. There were even a few spirit-level magic weapons. Perhaps this was all that Nangong Yu had brought with her for this trip. Continue. Xiao Yang smiled. Such sincerity made Xiao Yang extremely satisfied. Such a huge amount of spiritual stones was enough to increase the wealth of the flowing cloud realm by quite a bit. There was no choice. The flowing cloud realm was poor, and there were a lot of things waiting to be done. Naturally, they needed more resources, helping Nangong Yu out while he was at it, and he would even be able to obtain a decent reward. This transaction seemed to be worth it. As a leader, there were naturally more things to worry about. How could he not be concerned about the development of a realm? Nangong Qing is willing to pay 100,000 middle spiritual stones. Nangong Yu said. Xiao Yang nodded his head. He was quite satisfied with this. If these 100,000 middle spiritual stones were given to a person, as long as he or she had some talent, it would be enough to make him or her a 5th stage martial dominator. This was not a small sum, and the effect it could have would naturally be extraordinary. If they were not used and given to the spirit of the world, these items would be enough to expand their spiritual veins. 10 spirit-level magic weapons. 10 bottles of upper-level pills. Nangong City's specialties. Nangong Yu also started to talk about the price she was willing to pay. Although it was inevitable that Nangong Yu would lose a lot of money this time, and the wealth that Nangong City had accumulated over hundreds of years would be spat out in one go. But what difference did it make? If Nangong City was unable to overcome this obstacle, then all their wealth would be wasted and would be meaningless. Furthermore, they had accumulated over tens of thousands of years and had accumulated quite a bit of wealth. Even if a part of it were to fly out, although it would be painful, it would not be a serious injury. If they were to lose the battle with Shiman City, it would not only be a serious injury, but everything would be turned into nothingness, heading toward destruction. Xiao Yang nodded his head with a smile after hearing this. The conditions that Nangong Yu offered were not bad at all. Furthermore, they were within his acceptable range. If she were to keep her promise, then the deal would be feasible. However, there was a huge problem to be solved. Shiman City was coming at them ferociously, and it would not be easy to defeat them. I can accept these conditions, but they are only limited to me. As for Cultivator Xingtian, I might have to trouble City Lord Nangong to talk to him personally. Although we're on the same path, our backgrounds are different. Xiao Yang said with a smile. Chapter 3025. All this while, Nangong Yu had thought that Xing Tian obeyed Xiao Yang's every word and that they came from the same world. However, she was now certain that this was not the case. The price he offered to Xiaoyang was already very high. Initially, he wanted to ask for their help like this. Of course, as a 7th-level martial emperor, Xing Tian's strength was not to be underestimated. He could fill in the gap left by Zhao Yunfu. Furthermore, he had heard that Zhang Xuanji had died in Xing Tian's hands. From this, it could be seen how powerful and formidable that person was. If he could help, the situation would change greatly. Xing Tian's strength is not weak. With his help, this matter will be much simpler. Xiaoyang calmly said. Xiaoyang and Xing Tian had fought seriously before. Naturally, he was aware of his capabilities. At that time, Xiaoyang was able to defeat Xing Tian partly due to luck. How many years of refinement had he gone through to obtain the inheritance? Meanwhile, Xing Tian had only obtained the Horned Dragon's inheritance for a few months. Yet he was already so powerful. Now that Xing Tian had broken through again, it was easy to imagine how powerful he had become. With Xiaoyang's words, Nan Gongyu's expression instantly became much better. A smile appeared on her face. I understand. Thank you for your guidance. Nan Gongyu smiled, although it was inevitable that they would have to pay a higher price to ask Xing Tian for help. However, from Nan Gongyu's point of view, although it would be painful, it was still worth a try. After all, if they had an additional 7th-level cultivator, they would have a lot more manpower in the upcoming battle. However, there was still a problem. Xing Tian had entered the Cloud Valley, and they did not know when he would come out. It could even be said that most of Nangong City's strength was gathered in the Cloud Valley. Many people wanted to obtain an opportunity that belonged to them. If they didn't obtain something that they were satisfied with, they wouldn't be able to walk out so easily. As she thought of this, the worry in Nangong Yu's heart lessened. But in the current situation, if they wanted to confront Shimin City, this was undoubtedly the most suitable choice. Brother Xiao, we still don't know when Dao friend Xingtian will be able to come out from the Cloud Valley. Right now, we should first discuss how we should design Westgate City. Nangong Yu asked, even though Nangong Yu already had some plans in her heart. After all, this was a huge Nangong City. As the city lord, he naturally had to worry about it. However, he felt that there were still some flaws in this, and the effect might not be that good. Xiaoyang had always been resourceful. If he could get a better idea from him, it would naturally be the best plan. Now, even Nangong Yu regarded Xiaoyang with great importance. So what if there was a difference of 1 level between them? He was an esteemed guest of Nangong City, an existence that he deeply respected. If not for Xiaoyang's intervention, Nangong Yu would have been left with no choice but to wait for death. Furthermore, Nangong City would most likely be destroyed, and he would become a sinner. I wonder if City Lord Nangong has a capable subordinate who can make a mask of Zhao Yunbu? Xiaoyang smiled and asked. Hearing this, Nangong Yu's brows instantly relaxed. This was indeed the best plan. Previously, Xiaoyang had used the art of disguise to make Zhao Yunbu unable to recognize them. Then, it would be much easier to carry out the plan. Furthermore, since Xiaoyang had swallowed Zhao Yunbu's soul, he could naturally understand some of his nature. Hence, it would be much easier to disguise as Zhao Yunbu and lure Shimin City to attack. At that time, they would be in the light, while Shimin City would be in the dark. I have an uncle who is skilled in this. However, he is still in the Cloud Valley. As Nangong Yu spoke, her brows were deeply furrowed. Seeing that Nangong Yu had understood his intentions, Xiaoyang's lips curled into a smile. Talking to smart people was never tiring. Sometimes one only needed to raise their heads and they would be able to understand each other's thoughts. Hence, it was best to avoid wasting time talking. However, this is not a problem. I will immediately send people into the Cloud Valley and invite them out. Nangong Yu took a deep breath and said in a low voice. Xiaoyang nodded. This was for the best. Furthermore, it was inevitable that there would be a decisive battle with Shimin City. If they wanted to fight against Shimin City with just the number of people in the main camp, it would be rather difficult. In fact, it could be said that this was undoubtedly a fantasy and would not be of much use. sooner rather than later. Xiao Yang calmly said. Nan Gongyu nodded. Furthermore, the people from Shimin City would soon attack. If everything was too late, then this so-called arrangement would become a dream. At that time, if they forcefully fought against Shimin City without scheming against the other party, then what they would face would be a tough battle. Even if Nangong City won, the final result would be a Pyrrhic victory. In that case, the situation would be very bad. Nangong City, who had suffered serious injuries, might even become the prey of others. How could Nangong be careless about this? In fact, the slightest bit of carelessness could bring about extremely frightening consequences. Nangong rubbed her forehead and calmed herself down before she said, I will have to trouble Brother Xiao. If Nangong City is able to overcome this obstacle, we are willing to be your friends for generations to come. Xiao Yang let out a calm smile, as if he was not too bothered by such words. He was not sure about the current situation yet. Hence, he would have to worry about the future later. Besides, it was hard to tell how sincere Nangong was. After him, these so-called disturbances would not be a big deal in the eyes of the younger generation. As long as the reward this time was generous enough, it would be enough. Why should he worry about other things? I have a plan. Now it depends on whether City, Lord Nangong's actions are fast enough. Xiao Yang calmly said. Everything depended on Zhao Yunbu's face. If the mask couldn't be made, then the most crucial part would be missing. When the time came, the consequences would be different. All of a sudden, an explosion was heard, causing Nangong to frown her eyebrows. Could it be that Shimin City's plan had changed and they had arrived so quickly? However, Nangong could feel that it was a battle between a few experts and not a huge army. Brother Xiao, I'll go out and see what happened. Nangong said and immediately walked out. How could Nangong not be worried when a huge battle suddenly broke out in the camp? Now, they were like birds that were startled by the twang of a bow. Any slight change would cause them to panic. Chapter 30:26. Xiao Yang immediately chased after him. At this critical juncture, if there were any unforeseen events, then the situation would become even more unpredictable. If he could quickly suppress the unforeseen events and control everything in his hands, then the next step of the plan would naturally be much smoother. At the very least, if they were discovered by the other party, then the situation would become extremely bad. After exiting the tent, Xiao Yang raised his head and saw 3 white-haired elders surrounding a slender man. The 3 elders were not weak either. Judging from their auras, they were all at the 7th level martial emperor realm. Needless to say, the appearance of these 3 people was probably from Nangong City. As for the person being surrounded, it was Xiao Yang's companion, Xing Tian. After this guy entered the Cloud Valley, how did he offend Nangong City? Furthermore, judging from the situation, this battle seemed to be unavoidable. Nangong saw that the situation was not good and immediately shouted, Uncles, let's talk nicely. This fellow Taoist Xingtian is an honored guest invited by your nephew. If there is any misunderstanding, please talk it out. Don't fight and hurt the harmony. In the upcoming battle, Nangong would need to borrow Xing Tian's strength. If they were to fight now, it would only cause unnecessary losses. Hearing this, the 3 elders exchanged glances. Although they did not show any signs of fighting, they still looked like they were about to pull out their swords and did not show any signs of stopping. Seeing this, Nangong became even more anxious. If this continued, would they only stop after they caused a huge commotion? Uncles, is this how our Nangong City treats its guests? Saying this, Nangong's face was filled with anger. As such, the 3 old men let out a muffled groan. Soon after, they landed on the ground and stood beside Nangong. A disdainful smile appeared on Xing Tian's face, as if he felt that this family was laughable. Seeing Xing Tian's attitude, the 3 of them were even more furious. Nangong immediately went to stop him. Xing Tian, stop while you are ahead. Don't bully the host as a guest. Xiao Yang calmly said. When Xing Tian heard this, he immediately landed on the ground and stood behind Xiao Yang without saying a word. If Xing Tian were to fight on his own, he knew that if Nan Gongcheng really wanted to kill him, it would be hard for him to escape. However, with Xiao Yang's help, the situation would be different. Even if he couldn't win, he could at least escape and not die here. I don't know what kind of misunderstanding you have, but please clarify it now, Nan Gongyu said. Although Nan Gongyu was able to forcefully suppress this matter, for the sake of cooperation in the future, it was better for some things to be said clearly. Otherwise, if there was a barrier in his heart, no matter what he did in the future, there would be restrictions. If that was the case, then it really wasn't good news. It could even be said that as this matter fermented, it was very likely to delay important matters. What else could it be? It's just that your Nangong clan can't afford to play. Xing Tian laughed disdainfully. Regarding this matter, he was also angry in his heart. What do you mean we can't afford to play? You audacious bandit! How dare you enter our Nangong clan's Cloud Valley and steal our opportunity? An old man scolded angrily, appearing to be very angry. Xiao Yang looked over. From Zhao Yinfu's spirit, he knew that this was the old man of the Nangong clan, Nangong Guang, who had a bad temper. The Cloud Valley is our Nangong clan's forbidden ground. It's one thing for you to enter, but you even dare to steal our opportunity. That's not kind at all. What do you mean by that, bandit? Another old man scolded angrily. This old man was Nangong Jiu. The last one was called Nangong Shi. The three of them were blood brothers, and each of them was at the 3rd and 7th level. They were extremely powerful. Furthermore, because they were blood brothers, the three of them worked together, and their cooperation was even more intimate. At that time, many people thought that the position of City Lord Nangong would fall on top of the three of them. However, the three of them more or less had some flaws in their personalities. In addition, Nangong Yu's father was a genius who suppressed the three of them. Hence, they were able to become the main branch. After that, the death of Nangong Yu's father in battle was more or less related to them. Hence, the three of them viewed Nangong Yu with special importance. Perhaps it was because of guilt, or perhaps it was because Nangong Yu's abilities were indeed outstanding. Hence, the three of them were also loyal supporters of Nangong Yu. When she took up the position of city lord, if anyone dared to oppose her, they would have to go through them first. Misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. Uncles, fellow Xing Tian was invited by me to enter the Cloud Valley to search for opportunities. Everything is up to fate. If he is fortunate enough to obtain an opportunity, he can just take it. What's the harm in that? Nangong Yu said with a smile. At this moment, Xing Tian's expression finally turned a little better. Since Nangong Yu was still able to keep her promise, that was for the best. From the looks of it, this city lord's character was not bad and her image had not collapsed. Nangong Jiu and the other two looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. Since the city lord had already said so, how could they continue to hold on to it and not let it go? However, when they thought about how it was not an easy task for the members of the Nangong family to enter the Cloud Valley in search of an opportunity, they could not help but feel a little indignant and displeased in their hearts. However, since the city lord had already spoken, no matter how indignant they were, they could only forcefully swallow it down. Since it's all a misunderstanding, let's just laugh it off and not take it to heart. It's also my fault for not informing you in advance. Hence, such a situation occurred. It's my fault. Nangong Yu said with a smile. Xing Tian cupped his hands and said with a smile, City Lord Nangong's magnanimity is truly admirable. Currently, Xing Tian's view of Nangong Yu had changed slightly. At the same time, he also glanced at Xiao Yang. He also felt that something was amiss with this matter. However, one would not slap a smiling person. Since this matter was going to be settled, why should everyone continue to be entangled? Nangong Jiu and his two brothers cupped their hands and said, Fellow Xing Tian, we have offended you. Please forgive us. Although the three of them were somewhat indignant, and unwilling. The city lord had already expressed her stance. Why should they continue to be in a stalemate? Nan Gongyu saw that they had reconciled. Although it was not complete, it was already not easy for them to reach this step. Many things have happened in the past few days. Uncles and fellow Xing Tian, please find another place to talk, Nan Gongyu said. Nan Gongjiu and his two brothers instantly frowned. Instantly, they felt that the matter was not as simple as it seemed. Xing Tian, on the other hand, looked at Xiaoyang. He suddenly felt that Nan Gongyu's magnanimity was calculated, and this made him feel somewhat uncomfortable. However, Xiaoyang only smiled indifferently and did not say a single word. Chapter 30:27. Under Nan Gongyu's lead, the group of people sat down in the newly built main tent. After sitting down, Nan Gongyu immediately cast a barrier to ensure that their conversation would not be leaked out. Although he had already banned them from speaking, it was still a problem whether the others were reliable. Since there was one Zhao Yunbu, would there be a second one? These were all unknown. Hence, the only thing Nan Gongyu could do was to be careful and not let any more information leak out. Soon after, Nan Gongyu began to talk about what had happened in Nangong City these days. When the three elders heard that Zhao Yunbu was a spy, they were even more furious. They never expected things to turn out this way. When they heard that it was Shimin City's plan, and that they were planning to destroy Nangong City, they were all furious. They could not wait to charge over and have a decisive battle with Shimin City. At the same time, they were also scared witless. This kind of danger was silent. If they hadn't been discovered, they would probably have lost their lives in ignorance. After introducing themselves and explaining the situation, everyone knew what was going on. Thank you for saving my Nangongqing this time, Cultivator Xiao. I've offended Cultivator Xingtian before. Please forgive me. Nangongjiu apologized once again. However, this time Nangongjiu was sincere. If Xingtian did not kill Zhang Xuanji, they would not have known so much, and the situation would have been even worse. These three, to Nangong City, were their benefactors. Xingtian did not bother about it and said, "No discord, no concord. There's no need to take it to heart." After hearing these words, Nangongjiu and the rest laughed. Indeed, the people the city lord befriended were not bad. They were all heroic and would not fight over such a small matter. Of course, the three of them knew that they would need to borrow the strength of these three to help the Nangong clan overcome this crisis. Hence, these three were truly VIPs. Cultivator Xing Tian, the Nangong clan, is in trouble this time. Please lend us a hand. As for the reward, the Nangong clan will not be stingy. Nangong, you stood up and cupped her fists. Hearing this, Xing Tian frowned slightly. He glanced sideways at his partner, who was sitting there calmly. It was obvious that they had already reached an agreement. This was a puddle of muddy water, and it was also an internal struggle of the bright curse realm. If they were involved in it, they would probably cause unnecessary trouble. Since City Lord Nangong has given me an opportunity in the Cloud Valley, as a return gift, I will help you this time. However, I have to say the ugly words first. I can help, but there's no need to risk my life, Xing Tian said with a smile. Nangongyu smiled and nodded her head in agreement. Nangongjiu and the other two were a little displeased. If they wanted to help, they naturally had to use their full strength. If their attitude was wavering, how could they display their full strength without risking their lives? Soon after, Nangongyu continued, Uncle Guang, please enter the Cloud Valley once more and call out everyone who can fight to prepare for battle. Time is of the essence, and we cannot delay. When Nangongguang heard this, he immediately left without any delay. Nangongguang was the same. Once something happened, he would do it immediately, as if it was extremely urgent. It was also because of this character that if no one stopped or led him, it would be very easy for him to get into trouble. Especially when he was leading a clan, he might take the wrong path because of his radical nature. Uncle Sure, please immediately make a human skin mask according to Zhao Yunfu's appearance, Nangongyu said. Nangong sure also left with the order. Although he was not sure what the plan was, he could roughly guess it. At this critical juncture, the city lord naturally wouldn't let them do something meaningless. Hence, they only needed to follow orders. Brother Xiao, now that this matter is no longer a problem, please tell us what we should do next, Nangong said with a smile. Although she had a rough idea in her heart, there were still some details that needed Xiaoyang to finalize. Moreover, this plan was planned by him, so he had to make it clear. Xiaoyang nodded and said, "It's simple. Next, I will take the initiative to contact Westgate City. Once the mask is made, I will go and meet with their people to formulate a plan to take down this place." Nangong Yu smiled when she heard this. That would be for the best. If Xiaoyang could understand the other party's actions clearly and come up with a corresponding strategy, it would naturally be much easier to deal with them. Nangong Jiu frowned slightly and said, "Although Zhao Yunfu's character is radical, I'm afraid it won't be easy to completely imitate him." Once Xiaoyang was exposed, the situation would become much worse, and he would not be able to return. At that time, everything would be exposed, and the so-called situation would change again. Xiaoyang waved his hand and said, "Senior, don't worry. I have a way to deal with it." Seeing that the city lord did not express any objection, Nangong Jiu could only assume that they had their own methods to deal with it. It was not good for him to say anything more. Xing Tian sat at the side and yawned, as if this matter was not important to him at all. In fact, Xing Tian was very clear that he should just be a chess piece. Why should he think so much? He was utterly defeated in the battle with Xiaoyang in the Myriad Beast realm. Therefore, he did not think that he was much more powerful than Xiaoyang. Therefore, listening to him was the right thing to do. Back then, Xiaoyang and Nangong Jiu were able to play the entire Myriad Beast realm in circles. Now that he wanted to help a force of similar strength win, wouldn't it be a piece of cake? Although the process might be dangerous, in Xing Tian's eyes, it could only be a daunting experience. Following this, Xiaoyang continued to give a general idea. As for the details, he would have to wait until he met with the person in Westgate City to figure it out. After all, he did not know enough about Westgate City. Even if he combined all the information he knew from Nangong Jiu, it could only be considered a smattering of knowledge. However, this information was enough. Knowing the approximate strength of the opponent, it was not a problem to win. How to relax and reduce the losses was the most important thing. Moreover, if there were any other variables, how should they deal with them? There were so many heroes in the world. Although they had turned from the light to the dark, it was unknown whether Westgate City still had any trump cards up their sleeves. Therefore, it was naturally beneficial to have one more card up their sleeve. Chapter 3028. After explaining the matter properly, everyone dispersed to make their own preparations. After walking out of the tent, Xing Tian grumbled, "We're in big trouble this time. I heard you say that Westgate City has invited powerful external aid. Is it really okay for us to get involved?" At the beginning, Xing Tian didn't want to get involved. However, because of Xiaoyang, he had no choice but to get involved. However, after going through so many things, Xing Tian also began to feel some changes. For example, there was no friendship without discord, and there was genuine respect. Although the Nangong clan did indeed need their help, there was a difference between genuine respect and purely utilitarian respect. After all, Xing Tian was a ferocious beast that had taken human form. Hence, he found many things novel and even strange. However, these strands of feeling made him realize that sometimes changes were good. "It's just a deal," Xiaoyang said indifferently. Xing Tian couldn't help but laugh awkwardly at such heartless words. If it was in the past, he would think this way. However, what Xiaoyang did now couldn't be explained by a simple business deal. This favor was definitely going to be done. You, on the other hand, what did you obtain in the Cloud Valley this time around that caused the three of them to chase you out of the Cloud Valley and even fight it out? Xiaoyang asked in a somewhat puzzled manner. Xing Tian waved his hand indifferently and said, "It's nothing much. I just got a curse seal. I don't know how powerful it is. However, looking at the other party's anxious look. I know it's not simple. As he said that, Xing Tian's lips curled into a smile. Now, it seemed that among the three of them, only Xiaoyang still had nothing to show for it after entering the secret realm. Gaining the upper hand in this aspect made Xing Tian feel a lot better. Finally, he was able to suppress this guy in a certain aspect. If he could continue to accumulate, Xing Tian believed that he would be able to defeat Xiaoyang in no time. Xiaoyang smiled and said, "Congratulations." Xing Tian, on the other hand, was at a complete loss. He didn't know what to say. However, looking at Xiaoyang's expression, he didn't seem to be mocking or perfunctory. He seemed to be sincere. This made Xing Tian feel a little embarrassed. This feeling was indeed very strange. Is this the so-called good side of human nature? Xing Tian thought to himself and felt very comfortable. If he could really become friends with Xiaoyang one day, it would be pretty good. He was a good person and had high aspirations. They might even go to a bigger stage together in the future. This way, even if he went to a completely unfamiliar place, he wouldn't have to look around and not have any friends. Thinking of this, Xing Tian's heart was filled with sorrow. There were many outstanding people in the myriad beast realm, but their vision was limited by the world around them, and they fell into endless invasions. Otherwise, what kind of situation would the current Wanshou realm be in? Xing Tian could only give up. He felt that there was nothing he could do to change it. After all, countless years of adhering to the rules could not be changed by anyone alone. It wasn't that Xing Tian wasn't strong enough, but that the realm of beasts only looked at the benefits in front of them. They would even fight until their heads bled for the benefits in front of them. It was hard to change if they weren't of one mind. As for the suppression of martial power, that could only be done on the surface. After saying a few words, Xiaoyang returned to his tent to continue thinking about this matter. He began to think about more situations. Xiao Man was at the side, studying the use of the mountain river map. After all, she wouldn't have many chances to contribute in the upcoming battle, so she didn't need to familiarize herself with the use of the map. Moreover, if the situation wasn't good, she could take Xiaoyang and Xing Tian away immediately. That was their last escape route. Now that it was in her hands, Xiao Man naturally didn't dare to be careless. As for Xing Tian, he eagerly went to study the curse seal that he had obtained. Although he didn't know how powerful the curse seal was, it was definitely of high quality. Under Nangong use arrangements, the entire tent began to operate in an orderly manner, preparing for the upcoming battle. Today, a storm was brewing in the Nangong camp. During this period, there was an outsider who wanted to escape. Just as he walked out of the camp, he was killed by Nangong Yu. At this point, those elders who were close to Zhao Yunbu naturally didn't dare to move. This kind of house arrest gave them a chance to live. If they dared to go against it, they would be courting death. Not long after, a powerful aura soared into the sky. Many people present sensed it. Later, Xiaoyang found out that it was Nangong Yu's only son, Nangong Wen Xan, who had successfully stepped into the 7th rank. Under Nangong Yu's arrangement, they had met once. Nangong Wen Xan had a majestic appearance and gave off a noble aura. Compared to his father, he was more like a city lord. That day, Nangong Yu couldn't stop smiling. Her only son's breakthrough made her extremely happy. Furthermore, Nangong Wen Xan was still very young. If he didn't care about worldly matters and focused on cultivation, he might be able to advance even further. At that time, it was extremely possible for Nangong Cheng to enter the 3 gates. However, these were all prerequisites. Whether it would be successful or not was unknown. However, there was a thought and hope that filled them with fighting spirit. Furthermore, Nangong Wen Xan's advancement into the 7th rank had greatly boosted the Nangong family's morale and strengthened their strength. Even Xiaoyang couldn't help but think highly of this person. He could even feel a clear fighting spirit. The other party wanted to compete with Xiaoyang. However, because of the impending battle, everyone had a tacit understanding and didn't expose him. Once they started fighting, it definitely wouldn't be a small fight. At that time, if both sides were heavily injured, it wouldn't be good for the upcoming battle. At the same time, the elites of the Cloud Valley began to appear one after another. Most of them were 5th or 6th rank experts. As for this battle, from their point of view, they could easily lose their lives. It was best if they didn't participate. At the same time, a 7th rank expert also appeared. He was also an elder of the Nangong family. In a short period of time, all the preparations were completed. Only one thing was missing. When the agreed time was about to arrive, Nangongshire finally finished making the masks and delivered them to Xiaoyang. Now everything was ready. There was only one day left until the agreed time. Xiaoyang looked at the numerous masks placed in front of him and carefully chose one. In the end, I'm still a little lacking. I haven't done this for a long time and am rusty. Nangongshire smiled bitterly. Chapter 30:29. Looking at the masks in front of him, it gave people a sense of mystery. But no matter how they looked at it, they felt that it lacked some charm. In the end, it was just a mask and not a real face. Then, Xiaoyang took off his original mask and started to cover his face with another mask. Suddenly, the corner of Nangongshire's mouth twitched. He originally thought that what he saw was Xiaoyang's real face, but now it seemed that he was still too young. What he saw before was fake. But then again, if Xiaoyang really showed his real face, he probably wouldn't be able to bait Zhao Yun. Therefore, it wasn't a big deal to look at it this way. It was always good to be more cautious. If too much was exposed, it would probably cause endless trouble. Moreover, Xiaoyang came to the bright curse boundary this time to find his own opportunity and not to cause trouble. If it wasn't for their previous friendship, Xiaoyang definitely wouldn't have interfered in this matter. Thinking of this, Nangongshire felt a lot more relieved. Although in the upcoming battle, Xiaoyang might just turn around and leave if something went wrong, Xiaoyang would definitely leave. However, this was to be expected. After all, everyone wanted to live and there was no need to risk their lives for this. However, Xiaoyang was willing to help out. This was already very difficult. Otherwise, they would probably still be waiting for death in the Cloud Valley. How could they still do so many things? When Xiaoyang put on Zhao Yun's mask, he looked very stiff and stiff. It was very out of place. It was like the face of a dead person. No matter how one looked at it, it was a little strange and even suspicious. It seems that my skills are still a little lacking. Nangongshire said with some self-blame. He hadn't done these things for a long time, so it was inevitable that he felt a little rusty. And Xiaoyang was also the most crucial link. If Westgate City found any clues, then it might lead to some serious consequences. Suddenly, Xiaoyang smiled. Instantly, Nangongshire was stunned. He looked on in disbelief and felt that it was very strange. What he saw now seemed to be a living Zhao Yunbu. The utilitarian and radical look in Zhao Yunbu's eyes was difficult to conceal. Good, good. Nangongshire couldn't help but praise. What a good Xiaoyang! He could actually imitate it to perfection. This method was indeed impressive. As a result, Nangongshire felt a lot more at ease. With this charm, as long as the other party wasn't overly suspicious, they wouldn't find any problems. The next step is to act according to the plan, but I don't know when the army of Westgate City will arrive. Xiaoyang said with an indifferent smile. Although they had agreed on a time before, there was no telling what would happen in the secret realm that would delay them. So far, he hadn't been able to get the latest news, so he could only wait. Soon after, Xiaoyang also changed into the clothes that Zhao Yunfu usually wore. Fortunately, Zhao Yunfu had a magic robe that could conceal his aura. Otherwise, he would be easily exposed in this realm. When Nangongyu arrived, she was also shocked. She was stunned. If she didn't know Zhao Yunfu too well, she might not be able to distinguish the subtle differences. Moreover, Nangongyu was also very clear that she could quickly find the differences between the two because she knew that the person in front of her was Xiaoyang. Mayor Nangong, I will take out your heart-devouring cicada now. It's not a problem to drag this on. If the other party still has some tricks up his sleeve, it won't be good. It means that your life is still in the other party's hands. Xiao Yang said in a deep voice. It wasn't that Xiao Yang wasn't confident enough. He did have his own unique understanding of the poison Dao, and it was difficult for others to match him. However, it was still lacking when it came to poison goo. Even though he had studied the heart-devouring cicada thoroughly, he didn't know if the other party would still have some tricks up his sleeve. Won't this make things worse? Nan Gongyu asked hesitantly. Since they wanted to scheme against Westgate City, what they had to do was naturally to maintain the same status quo. Zhao Yunfu has already told Westgate City about my matter. He thinks that the heart-devouring cicada isn't here, so he gave him such a precious treasure like the poisonous spirit banner to ensure that things go smoothly. Nan Gongyu nodded. If this was the case, it would be abnormal for the heart-devouring cicada to continue staying in his heart. Moreover, there would be many unnecessary risks. Hence, Xiao Yang started to take out the heart-devouring cicada. When Nangong Jiu and Nangong Wenqin saw the heart-devouring cicada crawling out under the guidance of the poison, they were all amazed. They felt that this method was indeed amazing. At the same time, they looked at Xiao Yang with more respect. Such a person was indeed amazing. So what if his realm was lower? As long as he was a friend, that was enough. To make an enemy of such a person, one would probably only do so when one's mind was not clear. Xing Tian watched from the side. He did not think much of this. Immediately, Xiao Yang took out the pills that he had casually refined in the past few days and handed them to Nan Gongyu. He said, "When you counterattack, take these pills. Then, the poisonous spirit banner's effect on you will be much smaller." After knowing the effects of the poisonous spirit banner, Xiaoyang was able to create an antidote after some research. Although the effects of the antidote were not stable, it was not a big problem to counteract a part of the effects. Fellow Xiao is really good. Nangong Yu gave a thumbs up and said. He was also worried about the effects of the poisonous spirit banner on them. At that time, most people's battle strength would be affected. However, if he had the pills, the situation would be different. Now, all the preparations had been completed. Then, the next step was to wait for the people of Westgate City to arrive. Then they would catch them off guard. That would be enough. Fellow Zhao's great kindness to our Nangong City will never be forgotten. Nangong Jiu cupped his hands and said. Xiao Yang waved his hand casually and said, "It's just business." Nangong Yu, who was already familiar with Xiao Yang's character, did not think much of it. However, Nangong Jiu and the others felt extremely awkward. Nangong Wenqin was very curious. What kind of person was this young man who seemed to be around the same age as her? Suddenly, a token on Xiao Yang's waist emitted a trace of spiritual qi. Xiao Yang picked it up. With a glance, he saw that it was the people of Westgate City who had sent him the latest news. After waiting for so long, they had finally arrived. Chapter 3030. The people from Westgate City have arrived, and they want me to go over now. Xiao Yang placed the token on the table. Everyone looked over, but they only saw a few strange words on it. They could not understand what they meant. Since Xiao Yang said so, they naturally believed him. After all, Xiao Yang had swallowed Zhao Yunfu's soul, so he could naturally understand the meaning of the words. Brother Xiao, go quickly. I will arrange everything here as soon as possible to welcome their arrival. Nangong Yu said with a cold smile. This time, it could be said that Westgate City had schemed a lot, and they even wanted to uproot Nangong City. How could Nangong Yu tolerate this? Therefore, he had to return an eye for an eye, and make the other party pay the price. Otherwise, he would not have suffered all these years for nothing. Xiao Yang waved his hand and said, "There is no hurry, but Mayor Nangong wants everyone to treat this as normal, and not let anyone sense that something is wrong." Now that things had already happened, and it was arranged, it was very difficult to continue treating things as normal. Humans were born with a sense of vigilance, and it was not easy to cover it up. Nangong Yu hurriedly nodded. She naturally understood this point. Since this plan had already been set up, they naturally could not allow any problems to occur. If he did not do anything right, the final result would only be a careless mistake that would cause him to lose the entire game. Brother Xiao, go quickly, I will arrange everything here. Nangong, you said somewhat anxiously. Xiao Yang waved his hand unhurriedly and said, It is meaningless no matter how fast you go. Let them wait for a while, and when the time comes, just give them a reason. Nangong Yu was speechless. She did not know what Xiao Yang was planning. But from the looks of it, every move he made was very stable, and there were no problems. Sometimes, if one was too anxious, it was easy to make mistakes. Furthermore, those consecrators who are imprisoned are also a problem. When the time comes, they will turn against us, and it will be difficult to deal with them. Normally, everyone can suppress it, but once the war starts, it's hard to say in the chaos, Xiao Yang said indifferently. They weren't afraid that they would run for their lives, but they were afraid that they would change sides at the critical moment. That would be a real headache. Nangong Yu frowned, and her eyes flashed with killing intent. In the end, only the dead were the safest. After killing all those who had expressed their intention to follow Zhao Yunbu, they would naturally become obedient. Xiao Yang seemed to understand the city governor's intention. He immediately shook his head and said, City Governor Nangong, please don't let your emotions affect your decisions. It's easy to kill someone, but if you kill a few of them, I'm afraid it will only cause panic among the people. Nangong Yu's frown deepened when she heard this. Naturally, he couldn't kill all of the foreign guests, but doing so would have a negative effect. For a moment, Nangong Yu could not help but feel a headache coming on. It seemed that no matter how this matter was handled, there would be flaws, and it would not be as smooth as before. The more she thought about it, the easier it was for her to feel annoyed and not know what to do. You can tell them directly that if they can perform meritorious deeds in the upcoming war, then we can let bygones be bygones, Xiao Yang suddenly said with a smile. Hearing this, Nangong Yu was stunned for a moment, then slowly nodded her head. This way, there would be less uncertain factors. What a person was most afraid of was naturally despair without any hope. It could be said that those people now were all in danger, afraid that City Governor Nangong would settle scores with them. But this way, they would not have to worry about it, and their mental states would naturally become much more relaxed. Some groundless things could easily cause a huge change in a person's mentality. Nangong Yu nodded her head. This was indeed a good idea. If they could capture him, there would be less trouble in the future. Suddenly, the way Nangong Yu looked at Xiao Yang changed again. Now, she felt that she could not see through this young man. He looked like he was single, but he was so shrewd in handling matters. This was something that no one had expected. Thinking about the previous conditions, Nangong Yu also understood that Xiao Yang was probably in existence with a high status in his own world. It could be said that he had experienced a lot of things, which was why he was so skillful in handling affairs. If she could form a good relationship with Xiao Yang's faction in the future, it might become a powerful external aid. That's feasible, Nangong Yu said with a smile. Nangong Yu was also very impressed. Xiao Yang's grasp of people's hearts was really amazing. She could not help but admire him. Nangong Jiu and the rest were also very doubtful. Those people had already betrayed them once. If they chose to believe them again, wouldn't it be easy for something to happen? In this way, if something really happened, what would they do? Thinking of this, everyone's expression became very ugly. This is indeed a good move. Nangong Wenqin was very sure of this point. After a round of discussion, they also went through the other details, using about an hour's time. Then, Xiao Yang pretended to be cautious and found a place to sneak out. Looking at Xiao Yang's back, Nangong Jiu and the rest were very doubtful. Was this a blessing or a curse? It could be said that they did not completely trust Xiao Yang, but for the survival of Nangong City, they had no choice but to place their hopes on him. Therefore, they were very conflicted, and their hearts were very conflicted. Nangong Yu, on the other hand, was very calm, as if she already had a card up her sleeve and was waiting for the arrival of victory. Then Nangongyu and Nangongwenshin also began to make some arrangements. Although they had already checked out the situation, they were still not sure. No matter how much effort Xiaoyang put in, if something happened on their side, it would be terrible. The current Nangong camp could be said to be in a situation where a storm was coming. In terms of time, it was also very urgent. Westgate City's attack might be arriving soon. If they were not able to make preparations before then, it might cause problems for the entire situation. This final step was naturally the most important one. They had to ensure that nothing went wrong. On the other side, after Xiaoyang passed by the Cloud Valley, he saw a person in front of a small river. This was the place where they had agreed to meet. The other party was sitting there cross-legged, looking like an expert. However, from his expression, one could tell that he was very anxious. Chapter 30-31. Xiaoyang quickly walked over. Seeing that person's anxious and furious expression, he knew that the other party was angry because of the delay. "Why did you come so late?" That person scolded angrily. From Zhao Yunfu's soul, Xiaoyang knew that this person was Shimin Xiao from Shimin City, a level 6 martial emperor cultivator. If he wanted to take him down now, it would naturally be an easy task. However, there was no need for that. Shimin Xiao had always been arrogant. Relying on his family's background, he could be said to be a tyrant. Furthermore, he was a direct descendant of the Shimin clan, the same as that second young master, Shimin Ban. However, compared to that second young master, Shimin Xiao's talent was many times stronger. Since he had talent, he also had the right to be unyielding. Xiaoyang did not smile apologetically. Instead, his attitude was extremely firm as he said, "Do you think that the people from Nangong City are useless? Previously, we were discussing whether to leave Yun Valley and search for opportunities elsewhere. If I were to leave so abruptly, wouldn't it be too abrupt?" Zhao Yunfu was like that. His strength was not bad, and he was the most crucial person in this matter. Furthermore, the Shimin clan head had given him great expectations, so he appeared to be extremely arrogant. Seeing that this Zhao Yunfu in front of him was so unyielding and did not even show him any respect, Shimin Xiao's expression instantly changed. However, when he thought about how the plan this time still required him to control the situation to reduce the losses and even smoothly end the battle, even though he was displeased, he could only suppress it for now. At most, it would not be too late to settle the score after this matter was over. If he insisted on fighting now, the final result would only be a delay. Although Shimin Xiao was arrogant, he did not dare to act recklessly when it came to important matters. After all, if any problems were to occur, he would not be able to bear the consequences. How could he not know which was more important? Immediately, Shimin Xiao suppressed his anger and said, "Is there anything unusual on Nangong City's side?" They had already discussed and decided on the plan long ago. However, sometimes they still needed to deal with the other party's variables. If it remained the same, then it would be very scary. Everything is as per normal. However, because they are leaving the Cloud Valley, many people have already left the Cloud Valley. If we want to take them down in one fell swoop, I'm afraid that we will need to mobilize many experts, Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. Shimin Xiao snorted in disdain and said, "Of course, go all out." After planning for such a long time, this could be considered as a heaven-sent opportunity. It was much better to fight in the secret ground than in Nangong City. Moreover, they were also clear that this attack was meant to directly defeat them. Or else, if someone managed to escape from Nangong City, it would be troublesome in the future. This time, their Westgate City wanted to turn the 4 cities into one city and squeeze their status into one of the 3 cities. With such a huge plan, they naturally couldn't be careless. How long until Patriarch Shimin and the others arrive? Xiaoyang asked. Shimin Xiao didn't know that the Zhao Yendu in front of him was someone else in disguise. He said, "They're already here. Once you've made your decision, we can begin." Hearing this, a hint of joy flashed across Xiaoyang's face. When Shimin Xiao saw this, he laughed coldly in his heart. Did this guy really think that he could reach the heavens in a single step? If Zhao Yendu was really here, he would naturally be overjoyed. Glory and wealth would be within his reach. There aren't many changes over there. Just follow the original plan, Xiaoyang said in a deep voice. Hearing this, Shimin Xiao nodded in agreement. That would be for the best. They wouldn't need to spend any effort to plan anything. Although many experts from Nangong City had already left the Cloud Valley, this didn't mean much to them. After all, this was all part of the plan. This way, they wouldn't need to go to the Cloud Valley and waste more time. Their Westgate City didn't have the chance to enter the Cloud Valley. Naturally, they wouldn't know how many traps there were. After all, that was the place where Nangong City rose to power. After tens of thousands of years, it was hard to tell what kind of strange things there were. By then, after killing all the powerhouses, Nangong City would only exist in name. As for the remaining cultivators, they were no longer a concern. They could easily wipe them out. Zhao Yendu, you have to cherish this opportunity. This is the only time you can truly become a cultivator of the bright curse world. And it's the most important step. Shimin Xiao said in a deep voice. Xiaoyang nodded. He naturally knew what Zhao Yendu was thinking. However, Shimin Xiao's special instruction this time made people feel that there was a hint of threat in it. The reason for all of this was naturally obvious. Due to Zhao Yendu's obsession, he was a little crazy. In addition to his extreme personality, it was easy for him to overlook some problems. As a bystander, Xiaoyang could see it clearly. Presumably, this instruction was the beginning of the message of getting rid of the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. One had to admit that Zhao Yendu was quite pitiful. As a chess piece, he was planted in Nangong City. In the end, his plan was exposed and he died. Even if the plan was not exposed, once he achieved success, the Shimin clan would still kill him without mercy. After all, Nangong City was a piece of meat. After spending so much effort to get him, how could they give him to an outsider? The so-called arrangement of the Shimin clan's patriarch was most likely based on Zhao Yendu's obedience. However, with Zhao Yendu's personality, would he be able to accept being asked to guard Nangong City like a puppet? If he didn't accept it, that would be death. By then, all the powerful cultivators of Nangong City would die in battle. The reason why Zhao Yendu was the spy would be because of his betrayal. By then, if Shimin clan decided to take action against him, how could a lone cultivator stand a chance against Shimin clan? It's related to my future. Of course I'll do it. Xiaoyang said with a high-spirited look. It was easy to pretend to be Zhao Yendu. All he had to do was to fully display his utilitarian nature. After hearing this, the smile on Shimin Xiao's face grew wider. Everything that happened next seemed to be set in stone, and Nangong City was just the beginning. Once Nangong City was settled, Zhao Yendu would temporarily take over Nangong City, then take care of the other two cities. It would not be too late for him to slowly take over after leaving this place. I hope you know that if anything goes wrong and delays the plan, your life will not be enough to compensate for it. Go now. Shimin Xiao reminded him once again before he became impatient and urged him to leave. Chapter 3032. When Xiaoyang heard this, he coldly snorted. Naturally, he knew the pros and cons of this matter. According to Zhao Yunfu's character, he naturally would not say anything. Thus, Xiaoyang flicked his sleeves and walked away, acting like a boss. Seeing this, Shimin Xiao's expression was extremely displeased. This guest was truly arrogant. Did he really think that he could be so arrogant just because he had done a great deed for the Shimin clan? Furthermore, this great deed had not been completed yet. Thus, it could not be credited to him. How could he be so arrogant so quickly? Isn't this a little too laughable? However, no matter how angry Shimin Xiao was, he could only continue to endure like before. After all, there were many matters that required Zhao Yunfu to handle. Defeating Nangong City and annexing, it could be said that Zhao Yunfu was an extremely important chess piece. His usefulness was extremely great. In the future, it would take a long time to replace Zhao Yunfu. Destroying a faction was only the first step. The biggest problem was how to annex it and assimilate it. After all, what they wanted was not only the victory of a great battle, but also the benefits that they could obtain in the future. Zhao Yunfu had been in Nangong City for dozens of years and was also the confidant of the city lord. Thus, he naturally knew a lot. With him as the informant, many things would naturally be easily solved, and it would no longer seem so stiff. Just you wait. In the future, I will definitely let you know the price of offending me. Shimin Xiao coldly snorted and turned to leave. Now, Zhao Yunfu naturally could not hear his mutterings. After Xiaoyang turned to leave, he directly returned to the Nangong clan's camp. Now, all he needed to do was wait. Once Shimin City gave the signal, he could immediately make his move. When Nangong Yu saw Xiaoyang return, she calmly smiled. The two of them looked at each other and naturally understood many things. Currently, there were not many people in the open. For example, Nangong Wenxin and Xing Tian were hiding in the dark, preparing to launch a sneak attack at any time to catch the other party off guard. If they revealed their full strength from the start, it would naturally be very unwise. Furthermore, Nangong Yu also had her own selfish motives. Currently, his only son, Nangong Wenxin, had already reached the 7th-tier martial emperor realm. In the long years to come, there was still a chance for him to improve further. Therefore, as long as he was alive, Nangong City would always be there. So what if it was destroyed today? In the future, Nangong Wen Xian would naturally rebuild a brand new Nangong City, an even more powerful Nangong Cheng. If today's matter could not be accomplished, then Nangong Wen Xian, who was hiding in the shadows, would escape at the first moment. She would not linger here, lest she lose her life. How is it? Nangong Yu asked with a smile. Xiaoyang looked around and said, "Everything will proceed according to the original plan." Immediately, Nangong Yu heaved a sigh of relief. If there were no changes in Westgate City, then they would naturally be the same. They only needed to continue waiting. Moreover, as time passed, it seemed a little hasty for them to change their deployment. Mayor Nangong, has everything been arranged properly? Xiaoyang asked in a deep voice. After all, after putting in so much effort, if Nangong City were to make a mistake, all his plans would be for naught. Westgate City might choose not to make a move after being exposed. However, if they were to clash with Westgate City, there would be no way out. Even if they had to forcefully attack, they would still have to take Westgate City down. After knowing Brother Zhao's kindness, the consecrators' morale is greatly boosted, and they are all willing to participate in the battle. Nangong Yu said. Xiaoyang nodded his head. That would be the best. Furthermore, this also had something to do with Nangong Yu's character. She gave people a forthright and straightforward feeling, as if she was from the pugilistic world. Therefore, many people believed that Mayor Nangong's words carried a lot of weight. Since Mayor Nangong said that as long as they contributed to the battle, they would be able to offset the betrayal, and their lives would no longer be in danger. What was there to be afraid of? If it were someone else who said it, the consecrators would not believe it. They would only think that Nangong Cheng was only doing it because of the lack of manpower. Mayor Nangong did it because of the expediency, but he was different. He would definitely honor his words. These guests were sometimes very smart. They knew that if they were to bear the name of a traitor, they would not be able to establish themselves in the bright curse world. Therefore, with Mayor Nangong's words, even if they were not in Nangong City, they could still be consecrators in other factions, and they would still have a place to stand. Looking at the forthright Mayor Nangong, Xiaoyang nodded his head with a smile and said, "If they want to leave after this, Mayor Nangong can just give them more money." From Xiaoyang's point of view, after this incident, it was impossible for the guests to continue staying in Nangong City. Although Mayor Nangong said that he would let bygones be bygones, many people still had a thorn in their hearts, and they could not help but pick on them secretly. Therefore, if they continued to stay, the pressure on their hearts would not be small. Nan Gongyu nodded his head. If these people were really willing to help, he would not be stingy with the money. After all, under the threat of their lives, they only agreed verbally and did not attack the people of Nangong City. Speaking of which, it was only a matter of attitude, and there was no need to harp on it. If these people were sincere in their betrayal and attacked the people of Nangong City, then Nangongyu would naturally not let them live. This was the mayor's bottom line. As long as they did not cross this line, then everything was negotiable. Once they crossed this line, then there was nothing to say. Of course, Nan Gongyu said calmly. These people had stayed in Nangong City for a long time, and their achievements could not be ignored. Even if they did not have any achievements, they had worked hard. Furthermore, Nan Gongyu was an emotional person, and a proper member of the pugilistic world. However, that was only his personality. Xiao Yang glanced at Nan Gongyu and smiled. There are not many people like you, who can understand everything. Nan Gongyu smiled. She knew very well that Nangong City had been weak for a long time, and if it were not for his forthright personality that attracted many guests to join him, how could he continue to maintain his position? However, there were both pros and cons. It was just a matter of what one wanted. However, when she thought about Zhao Yunqua's incident, Nan Gongyu could not help but feel sad. Suddenly, they heard an explosion and raised their heads to look, only to see a yellow firework exploding on top of the cloud valley. Chapter 3033. After seeing the yellow fireworks explode, Nan Gongyu's face darkened. He knew very well that it was the signal for Shimen City to take action. Before this, Xiaoyang had already explained many details to him. After all, only by knowing every step would he be able to come up with appropriate countermeasures and cooperate with them. Mayor Nangong, are you ready? Xiaoyang suddenly smiled and asked. Nangong nodded. He also knew that he could not catch the wolf without risking the child. Moreover, since they were going to beat Shimen City at his own game, they naturally could not act as if everything was fine. Although there was a huge risk in doing so, as long as they could control every step well, they would have a great chance of winning. Sometimes the greater the investment, the more benefits one could obtain. Risk and profit always existed side by side. Bang! With a dull sound, Xiaoyang immediately took action and slammed his palm on Nangongyu's chest. Caught off guard, Nangongyu seemed to be defenseless. After being hit by the palm, he was instantly sent flying. Xiaoyang, who suddenly changed his expression, did not seem to want to give up. He quickly rushed out and closed in on Nangongyu, as if he was going to take his life. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They did not know why the situation had turned out like this. Xiaoyang's sudden attack made many people feel that it was a little strange. Some plans could not be made known to everyone, so they were very confused. However, the mayor had previously said that no matter what Xiaoyang did, they should not act rashly. Therefore, they did not take action. Zhao Yunbu, how dare you? Seeing this, Sun Yi shouted angrily. At the same time, he also rushed out, looking as if he was going to protect the mayor with his life. Sun Yi had always been sharp. After seeing the fireworks in the sky, he knew that it was a signal. Now that Xiaoyang suddenly took action against the mayor, it must be part of their plan. Although Sun Yi did not know the specific plan, he knew that he would need to cooperate. If he did not intervene, Xiaoyang's act might not be able to continue. Bang! Both of their palms collided. Immediately, Xiaoyang was jolted back a few steps. At the same time, Sun Yi also staggered backward, his heart filled with shock. What surprised him was that although Xiaoyang was only a sixth-order cultivator, the power of that palm strike was not much different from that of a seventh-order cultivator. Is this person's strength really only at the sixth-order martial emperor realm? This caused Sun Yi to have countless doubts in his heart. He felt that it was impossible. At the same time, Nangongjiu and his brothers seemed to have noticed that something was wrong. They rushed out and surrounded Xiaoyang. "Brother Zhao, why are you doing this?" "Nangong," you struggled to stand up. She spat out a mouthful of blood and asked in pain. Previously, Nangong you had been betrayed by Zhao Yunbu. Thus, he also knew how painful her expression was. That was why he was able to reveal this side of her. "Zhao Yunbu, how dare you?" Nangong Jiu reprimanded angrily. Xiaoyang's gaze swept across the three people surrounding him, before he coldly laughed and said, "How dare you?" Hearing this, Nangong Jiu and his brothers were instantly enraged. They could not wait to kill this daring madman on the spot. Although they did not know many of the plans, they were clear that the person standing there was not Xiaoyang, but Zhao Yunbu. As long as they treated him this way, there would not be any problems. At the same time, Xiaoyang also glanced into the distance. He wanted to see when the people from Westgate City would arrive. Since they had already given the signal to attack, they should have already arrived. However, why did they not show up directly? They must have their own concerns. "Brother Zhao, I have always treated you well. Why did you injure me today? Or is there a misunderstanding?" Nangong you asked with a puzzled expression. Xiaoyang snorted and said, "Misunderstanding? There's no misunderstanding. I just want to kill you." As soon as these words came out, many people were shocked. The killing intent in those words was not concealed at all. It was as if he was really capable of doing such a thing. Instantly, the crowd's faces turned ugly, and in the next moment they were filled with rage. "Not bad? Haha. Your Zhong family people order me around. Is that not bad? Furthermore, how can I, Zhao Yunbu, stay under someone else's command for long?" Xiaoyang sneered. "Arrogant." Nangong Jiu shouted angrily and immediately sent out a palm strike. Seeing this, Xiaoyang did not dare to meet force with force and dodged to the side in a flash. "Brother Zhao, why? Since you attacked me like this, it will be difficult for you to leave this place today. What difficulties do you have? Tell me. If there is any problem, I can help you solve it." Nangong Yu said with a kind look. He seemed to be trying to persuade his close friend to stay, hoping that he would not lose him. "Difficult to leave? I don't think so. Today, everyone from Nangong City will be buried here. However, since we have been friends for so many years, I will bury all of you in the Cloud Valley and let you rest in the place where you made your fortune. Isn't that perfect?" Xiaoyang said with a smile. As soon as he said that, many people had different expressions on their faces. At the same time, many people walked out and surrounded Xiaoyang, making it impossible for him to escape. "Zhao Yunbu, do you really think that you are invincible? Today, I would like to see just how you will be able to kill your way out of this encirclement." Nangong Jiu roared furiously. Immediately his hair stood on end. One could see just how furious he was. After Nangong Jiu found out about some things, his anger toward Zhao Yunbu was naturally real. It went without saying that he hated these spies, as their Nangong city was almost destroyed because of them. "Then you can try," Xiaoyang said coldly. At that instant, Nangong Jiu, Nangong Shi, and Nangong Guang could no longer endure it, and attacked together toward Xiaoyang. With their current situation, it seemed like they could not wait to kill him on the spot. Xiaoyang let out a hollow laugh. Suddenly, a black glow flashed in his hand, and a huge black flag appeared in his hand. At that instant, Xiaoyang uttered a chant and waved the flag. Immediately, the bodies of Nangong Jiu and the other two weakened, and they fell to the ground. The rest of the people held their heads in pain, feeling extremely uncomfortable. As soon as the poisonous spirit banner was taken out, the poison was emitted, disturbing one's mind and causing them to lose their strength. In the plan of Shimin City, the poisonous spirit banner was the signal for Shimin City to launch a large-scale attack. Under the suppression of the poisonous spirit banner, Shimin City would be caught off guard and end the battle in the shortest time possible. Chapter 3034. The moment the poisonous spirit banner appeared, Everyone felt extremely uncomfortable. Their heads felt like they were about to split open, and their bodies felt weak. Xiao Yang held the poisonous spirit banner and laughed loudly. "Didn't you want to kill me? Why don't you come at me now? Why? Come on. Why are you lying on the ground?" Xiao Yang was acting extremely arrogant. It was as if in his eyes he was already an invincible existence. "How dare you?" Nangong Jiu stood up abruptly, but spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned extremely pale. It was obvious that he had forcefully suppressed the poison and had suffered a backlash. However, he did not collapse because of this. Instead, he walked step by step toward Xiaoyang. Although the poisonous spirit banner was causing them serious disturbances, with the cultivation of a 7th-level martial royal, it was enough to suppress it. Moreover, this was an act. If they wanted to make it more realistic, they naturally had to act more aggressively. If they fell on the spot like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, it would be strange and look like a trap. "Come and kill me, Nangongjiu. You old bastard, you've been ordering me around the most, and you've always found me an eyesore. Today, I'll definitely kill you." Xiao Yang scolded angrily. It was as if Xiao Yang was the real Zhao Yunbu, venting the anger in his heart and the unfair treatment he had received in the past. Nangongjiu did not reply when he was scolded. He continued to walk forward step by step, trying his best to suppress the effects of the poisonous spirit banner. At the same time, he needed to familiarize himself with it. This was the first time Nangongjiu and the others had encountered it. Hence, they did not have any experience and seemed to be struggling. Nangongyu, Sun Yi, and the others had some experience. Hence, it was much easier for them to deal with it. At the same time, Nangongyu's heart was filled with amazement. Xiao Yang's method was really powerful. That palm strike seemed to have hit him with full force and caused him to spit out blood. However, it was only a superficial wound. It did not hurt him at all. Even his internal organs were not shaken. This was the brilliance of the attack. It seemed to have hit him hard, but the injuries were actually very light. Nangongshi and Nangongguang stood up one after another and began to approach Xiaoyang. When Xiaoyang saw some of the foreign consecrators standing up and walking towards him, he frowned and his expression turned ugly. "If you don't come out now, when they suppress the poisonous spirit banner, I'm afraid it will be a hard battle." Xiaoyang suddenly roared. The words caused the people of Nangong City to be stunned. Although they already knew about this, they still didn't dare to be careless. After all, the slightest carelessness could give the game away. At that time, the situation would only become much worse. Details could often determine success or failure, so they naturally had to pay attention to these issues. "Haha, Zhao Yunbu, well done!" At this moment, a rather sinister voice suddenly sounded. Immediately, everyone turned to look at the source of the voice. What they saw was a group of people rapidly approaching. In the blink of an eye, they had arrived at the entrance of the camp. The person leading the group had a sinister face and an aquiline nose. He gave off a chilling feeling. This person was the governor of Shimen City, Shimenju. Behind Shimenju was a group of people. They were the Shimen clan's main forces and the foreign consecrators. There were also people on the left and right wings. On the left wing, they saw a familiar face, Lu Xinyu. If they were not wrong, the left wing was the Xianshui sect. They were all dressed in black robes. On the right wing was the 10,000 Poison sect. The person leading the group looked old and pleased. There was a smile on his face. It was obvious that the person from the 10,000 Poison sect was very satisfied with his sect's treasure. Once the poisonous spirit banner was released, it suppressed these experts until they could not raise their heads. Their strength was greatly reduced. Even if they managed to suppress the poison later, their combat strength would be reduced by at least 30%. In this way, it would be easy to take them down. The casualties would also be greatly reduced. When Nangongyu saw Shimin Ju appear, she immediately stood up shakily. There was a complicated look in her eyes. All of a sudden, she seemed to have understood something. Her face was filled with a sorrowful smile. Zhao Yunbu, you actually betrayed us and colluded with the people of Shimin City. Nan Gongjiu scolded angrily. Xiao Yang glanced at Nan Gongjiu indifferently and said, "What do you mean by betraying us? From the very beginning, I was the man of the Shimin City governor. As for going to your Nangong City, it was only part of my job." Seeing such a face, the people of Nangong City were filled with anger. Obscenities and profanities were being hurled at him. With regards to these insults, Xiao Yang just laughed it off. After all, they were insulting Zhao Yunbu. What did it have to do with him, Xiao Yang? Long time no see, Nan Gongyu. Shimin-ju smiled indifferently. Nan Gongyu snorted coldly. Her eyebrows furrowed. Instantly, an extremely strong murderous intent was emitted from her eyes. All of a sudden, he seemed to have come to a realization, saying, "Zhao Yunbu, I thought we were brothers who had gone through life and death together. I didn't expect this to be a trap." After she finished speaking, the smile on Nan Gongyu's face became extremely sorrowful. It was as if there was nothing more sorrowful than a dead heart. Anyone who saw it could not help but feel uncomfortable. Xiao Yang glanced at Nan Gongyu in disdain, as if he was replying on behalf of Zhao Yunbu. With regards to such an attitude, Nan Gongyu felt even more uncomfortable. "Shimin-ju, you are really good at scheming. This trap has been set up for decades." Nan Gongyu seemed to have understood everything and said sorrowfully. At this moment, Shimin-ju had an indifferent look, as if everything was as it should be. "We are all part of the 4 cities. It is impossible to take you down using normal means. However, if our Shimin City wants to take a step forward, we naturally need to put in more effort. Decades is just a blink of an eye. It is not enough," Shimin-ju said indifferently. At this moment, Shimin-ju was extremely excited. He knew that the establishment of his peerless achievement was now a starting point. If he could go further, then what he had would become even more. What was a few decades of scheming? They had tens of thousands of years of lifespan. These decades were just like a nap. If they could succeed, then all the effort they had put in previously would be worth it. Nan Gongyu, your character is your flaw. If you didn't set things up properly back then, how could there be today's situation? Shimin-ju said with a smile. The grudges between them had been going on for a long time. Sometimes there was no need to say anything when they bumped into each other. Chapter 30-35. Nan Gongyu let out a disappointed laugh. If she did not know that Shimin-chung was going to attack them, she would definitely be in despair due to the shock. However, Nan Gongyu was different now. She had a helper and had made preparations long ago. Therefore, she was extremely confident now. This time, he also wanted to fight it out with Shimin-chung to determine the victor. "Since you guys have such a big plan, then I'll let you know that sometimes you have to pay a price for your schemes. When you scheme against others, you must also be prepared to be schemed against by others. We have been fighting openly and secretly for so many years, but we have never had such a direct confrontation. Looks like this time, you won't give up until you completely destroy Nangong City." Nan Gongyu said with a bitter smile. Shimin-ju smiled. He did not deny such a statement. He had planned so much and created such a big battle. Of course, it was not a joke. If he could take down Nangong City this time, that would naturally be the best. In fact, it was inevitable. "Looks like you have already accepted this reality," Shimin-ju said with a smile. Now, Shimin-ju's heart was extremely carefree. This was a great opportunity to build up his achievements. After thousands of years of accumulation, Shimin City was finally able to reach a new height. Therefore, how could he not be excited? Furthermore, what he needed to do next was very simple. That was to kill everyone in Nangong City. At this moment, Xiao Yang stuck the poisonous spirit banner into the ground and walked toward Shimin-ju. Shimin-ju frowned as he saw Zhao Yunfu walking over. What was this guy trying to do at this moment? Such an action, no matter how one looked at it, was somewhat abnormal. Shimin family had, this time, I have completely offended Nangong City. If this matter were to spread out, I'm afraid my reputation would be damaged. However, I'm not sure if the benefits you promised me still count." Xiao Yang said. Now, Xiao Yang's thoughts were very simple. That was to get as close to Shiminju as possible. If he could take him down, then the battle would be one-sided. Otherwise, if Nangongcheng had to fight head-on in the end, not to mention other things, Nangongcheng's losses would not be small. Moreover, since they had already reached this point, it was impossible for both sides to give up. Therefore, this battle had to be fought. Since they were going to fight, they had to give it their all. If they could find some opportunities, then the situation would naturally change greatly. If the matter could be solved simply, why should it be complicated? Hearing Zhao Yunbu's words, Shiminju also laughed. He thought that this guy had some other plans. However, it was normal for him to bring this up at this critical juncture. Zhao Yunfu's utilitarian heart had always been very heavy. Because he wanted to obtain it too much, he worried about personal gains and losses, and even repeatedly confirmed it. This way, no matter how one looked at it, the matter would become much simpler. In Shiminju's opinion, the more eager Zhao Yunbu was for quick success, the greater the flaw of such a person, and the easier it was to control him. If Zhao Yundu had sacrificed so much and still acted as if he had no desires in the end, then that would be the most frightening thing. If he acted as if he had no desires, then he would usually be plotting for something bigger. "Old Zhao, don't worry. I have already said that my eyes are never set on the 4 cities. When the time comes, I will naturally have to take care of the cities. Since you are familiar with the affairs of Nangongcheng, the position of the city, Lord, will naturally belong to you." Shiminju's expression became much more relaxed. Although Zhao Yunbu's words made him a little unhappy, he still had to appease him. Even though what was done couldn't be undone, he still couldn't fall out with Zhao Yundu. Otherwise, once the other pawns in other places knew that this was the outcome, they would all defect. In order to achieve great things, some things naturally could not be fussed over. Those who achieved great things did not bother about the small things. When Xiaoyang heard this, he pretended to be satisfied and felt very comfortable. When Shiminju saw that Zhao Yunbu had already calmed down, he instantly heaved a sigh of relief. As long as this guy did not continue to cause trouble, then this matter would be considered to be over. Looking at the severely injured Nangongyu on the ground, Shiminju felt a little sad in his heart. Thinking back to when they were young, they had already started to fight, and there was no clear winner. This opponent, under the calculations and suppression of the current situation, finally had to withdraw from the stage. "Zhao Yunbu, do you really think that Shiminju is so easy to talk to? As his old enemy, I naturally understand his character. That is impossible." Nangongyu sneered. When these words came out, Zhao Yunbu's expression changed again. He stared at Shiminju, as if he wanted to know an accurate answer. At this moment, some of the people from Shimin clan started to look at Zhao Yunbu with anger. How could he be so wishy-washy when doing something big? "Old Zhao, you can't turn back now. Nangongyu's words are just to drive a wedge between us. Don't do anything stupid," Shiminju said in a deep voice. Now, in Shiminju's eyes, Zhao Yunbu was indeed a little unstable. Hence, it was necessary to appease his emotions. When Xiaoyang heard these words, he felt that it was funny. At this moment, the two of them were still pretending to be friendly. However, it was understandable that Shiminju was in a hurry to take action. Now that he had the attitude of a winner, he naturally had to show off. Nangongjiu and the rest started to curse at Zhao Yunbu. Such a person was simply inhuman. With regards to these words, Xiaoyang only listened and quietly took a few steps forward. Now that he was getting closer to Shiminju, if he could launch a surprise attack at a closer distance, the success rate would be much higher. Opportunities were to be found, not to be waited for. Furthermore, Shiminju would probably not participate in this battle. He only needed to wave his hand, and under such circumstances, the people behind him would be enough to quickly eliminate the people from Nangong clan. I remember that Zhao Yunbu's cultivation base is rank 7. When did your cultivation base drop? At this moment, Lu Xinyu suddenly frowned and said in a deep voice. When these words came out, a trace of astonishment flashed across Shiminju's eyes. Nan Gongyu and the rest could not help but feel their hearts tighten. Who was this guy? He actually saw through Shiminju's background with a single glance? Xiaoyang suddenly launched an attack. The sword in his hand flashed and rushed forward. Chapter 3036. Move like thunder. Xiaoyang had never thought that Lu Xinyu would see through him. There was a problem with his identity. How could he confront Shiminju? Once he said too much, he was afraid that he would make more mistakes in the end. Therefore, Xiaoyang was not in the mood to explain anything. Now was the only chance. He could only make trouble first, and see if he could seriously injure Shiminju. When Nan Gongyu and the others saw this, they knew that there was no way to continue this show. Therefore, they had no choice. A big battle was inevitable. They all took the elixirs that they had prepared beforehand. In the blink of an eye, that uncomfortable feeling began to recede, and he felt refreshed. When Lu Xinyu saw the flying sword, his expression suddenly became much gloomier. Just by looking at the sword, he could already confirm the identity of the other party. It was Xiaoyang who had risked his life and forced him to escape. At this moment, Shiminju saw the flying sword and shouted angrily. Suddenly, an extremely powerful aura erupted from his body as if it was indestructible. However, the speed of the sword was too fast. The Thunder Fire Divine sword directly pierced through the layer of aura and directly pierced into Shiminju's robe. At the same time, countless thunder sword chi burst out and began to strangle Shiminju at an extremely fast speed. The unforeseen event happened in the blink of an eye. The people of the Shimin family also rushed out and blocked in front of Shiminju to ensure that nothing would happen to him. When Xiaoyang saw this, he waved his hand and the divine sword flew back to his hand. At this moment, Shiminju had already shattered all the thunder sword chi. However, his expression was not good. His face was covered in dust, and there were even some places that were slightly charred. There were even cracks on his robe. It was obvious that the sword had only pierced his robe and did not injure him much. As for those injuries, they were only superficial wounds. Many people of the Shimin family were shocked. They also felt that it was a little inconceivable. What was going on? This unforeseen event happened too quickly. For a moment, everyone could not come back to their senses. They did not know what was going on and were very confused. Zhao Yunbu, are you crazy? How dare you betray us? Shimin Qiao stood up and shouted angrily. Previously, Shimin Qiao didn't see any clues. Even Shiminju didn't see anything. However, in this blink of an eye, the change was so fast. Lu Xinyu stared at Xiaoyang gloomily. He felt that this person had brought him too much humiliation. Now that they had met, shouldn't they settle all their old and new grudges? Thinking of this, Lu Xinyu's lips curled into a vicious smile. Nan Gongyu and the rest sighed and shook their heads. They did not expect that even under such circumstances, Shiminju was still not seriously injured. It seemed that the scheme this time was still lacking. Or it could be said that Lu Xinyu was the variable. If he had not suddenly seen through the clues, as he continued to approach and exert pressure, he might have had the opportunity to make a move. But now they seemed to only have one choice, and that was to fight to the death. Haha. Shiminju suddenly sneered. Now he naturally knew that the Zhao Yunbu in front of him was not the real Zhao Yunbu. What a wonderful show. Even I was fooled. Amazing, amazing. Shiminju clapped. Shiminju found it funny. Originally, he was the one who was scheming against Nan Gongcheng. He did not expect that he would be the one who was being schemed against. If someone had not seen through the clues, the situation would have been even worse. Xiaoyang waved the divine sword in his hand and shook his head. Such a great opportunity could only be said to be a pity. At the same time, the way he looked at Lu Xinyu was a little surprised. This person's ability was indeed not bad. No wonder the arrogant and despotic second young master had to respectfully address this person as Brother Lu. He did not dare to have any intention of offending him. It seemed that everything was reasonable. There was no such thing as a groundless rumor. I think this must be Xiaoyang. Shiminju smiled. That sword, in addition to Lu Xinyu's information and his second young master's complaints, it was not difficult for him to distinguish. Xiaoyang nodded. Since his identity had been exposed, there was no need for him to pretend anymore. Heroes indeed come from the young. Nan Gongyu, you are lucky this time to be able to obtain the help of such a person. Shiminju could not help but exclaim. A 6th-level martial emperor was able to defeat Lu Xinyu, who had just reached the 7th level. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this person's combat strength was. In addition to the current situation, his intelligence was also very impressive. Such a young man was indeed not easy to deal with. Nan Gongyu helplessly let out a wry smile and said, "If you did not scheme against me, you would not have been schemed against." Shiminju glanced at her and felt that it was fine. "Cultivator Xiao, you are indeed powerful. However, it is a pity to help someone like Nan Gongyu. As long as you are willing to help our Shimin city, you will be my guest. Nangong City can also be yours in the future. If you do not like it, you can choose the other 2 cities." Shiminju said with a smile. Although Xiaoyang had killed Han Qin and Jiang Ning, in his opinion, it did not matter if those 2 pieces of trash were dead. Besides, a single Xiaoyang was more powerful than 10 Han Qin and Jiang Ning. As for his son's grievance, he would let him suffer. Doting was doting, but important matters were important matters. Xiaoyang shook his head and said, "I don't have any thoughts about this. The Bright Curse Realm is only a place for me to pass by. I have never thought of settling down here." Shiminju nodded his head with a smile after hearing this. He could understand it too. If Xiaoyang was the same as Zhao Yunbu, he would not help Nangongcheng so easily. Since Cultivator Xiao is only a passerby, you're not interested in the Bright Curse Realm. Since you are willing to help Nangongcheng, it must be for the sake of benefits. As long as you are willing to not interfere, I will give you double the benefits of Nangongcheng. How's that? Shiminju said with a smile. Although Zhao Yunbu's death would make it troublesome for them to take over Nangongcheng in the future, it was fine as long as they looked at it from a different perspective. Since Zhao Yunbu was killed by someone else, they would not have to waste their time thinking about how to deal with him. At this moment, Nangongjiu and the others glanced at Xiaoyang nervously. In other words, the benefits offered by Nangongcheng were extremely generous. However, Shiminju immediately doubled the reward. Under the temptation of such huge benefits, who could resist it? Although they were prepared, if Xiaoyang changed his attitude, they would be in danger. Chapter 3037. Shiminju still had a very calm look on his face. It was as though he couldn't care less about the waves that were happening right now. After all, it was just a conversation. If the deal was successful, it would save him a lot of trouble, so why not? Besides, Xiaoyang was a smart and resourceful person, and no one knew what he was planning behind the scenes. Hence, as long as he was on his side, even if he had any tricks up his sleeves, they would be gone in the end. Those who wanted to achieve great things naturally couldn't hold onto small profits or small matters. It would not be too late to settle these small matters after the deal was done. Under the big picture, the bigger picture was the most important. Besides, if they took down Nangong City, the benefits they would receive would be on a completely different level compared to what they were giving out. Hence, no matter how one looked at it, this deal seemed to be worth it. Even Shiminju had a premonition that this Xiaoyang would be of great help in the battle between him and Nangongyu. The offer is indeed tempting, but it's a pity that you're too late. I've already made a deal with City Governor Nangong, so I can't go back on my words now. Xiaoyang smiled calmly. After hearing this, Shiminju frowned slightly. Such an attitude was considered tough. That's fine too. Since Brother Xiao is a businessman, you'll naturally prioritize profits. I'll pay you 3 times the price. What do you think? Shiminju said with a smile. Anything that could be done with money was not a problem at all. These riches could be obtained with a wave of his sleeves. Since he was using the Nangong clan's resources, what was there to worry about? It was just a small profit, but he could get it back in the long run. In this battle, Shiminju definitely had the confidence to take down Nangongyu, but he was afraid that he would suffer a great loss here and not have enough energy to deal with the other 2 cities. After all, once Nangong City was destroyed, the Dongfang and Baiming cities would definitely be in danger. Once they joined forces, the situation would be a lot worse, and their progress would be delayed. Haha. Shiminju, do you really think you understand people's hearts? Do you know what it means to be like-minded? I, Nangongyu, will never betray my friends. Similarly, Xiaoyang will not do the same. No matter what you say, it's useless. Nangong, you said in a carefree manner. Although he was heartbroken by Zhao Yunfu's betrayal, he felt very comfortable knowing a good friend like Xiaoyang. Gains and losses were as such. It all depended on how one looked at it. Shiminju did not say a word. He felt that all the cultivators in the world were the same. It was just a matter of what they liked. As long as he could cater to their liking and buy them over, it wouldn't be a big problem. Moreover, Xiaoyang could say that it was a deal, which was equivalent to hinting at him to bid. The highest bidder wins. Xiaoyang shook his head with a smile and said, It's not too late to talk about it after I'm done with City Governor Nangong. As soon as he said that, Shiminju's face turned grave. This guy, isn't his adherence to the rules a little too much? Xiaoyang, let me give you a word of advice. It's best if you don't know what's good for you. You should be clear that even if you're prepared, so what? Do you think you can go against Shimin City just like that? Nangong City's destruction is certain. If you want to die, just follow them. Shiminju's face was dark as he scolded angrily. Shiminju was speaking nicely, but Shiminju was insatiable. This made Shiminju very unhappy. If it wasn't for the fact that he had more concerns, why would he be so long-winded? From Lu Xinyu's words, Xiaoyang was indeed not a big deal. Therefore, Shiminju was willing to say a few more words to fight for him and reduce his losses. However, this guy wanted to go all the way. This made Shiminju extremely unhappy. Anxious. Shiminju, you're anxious. Nangongyu laughed heartily when she saw the situation. Thinking about the suffering she had gone through previously, the hatred in her heart became even more intense. She wished that she could take Shiminju down and even plant the heart-devouring cicada in his heart to let him feel such despair. Every day, she would be in despair and fear. Shiminju stared at Nangongyu. He felt that this muscular guy was just lucky. He didn't have any brains, but he met a benefactor who changed the outcome of this destruction. Did he really think that it was his own ability? Oh, then I would like to see what kind of tricks Shimin City has up their sleeves. Xiaoyang laughed. It could be said that from the moment they became enemies with Second Young Master, they knew that it was impossible for them to reconcile with Shimin City. In the next moment, Xiaoyang suddenly formed a hand seal. Instantly, the poisonous spirit banner that was stuck in its original position flew up. The poisonous spirit banner swayed with the wind, and the poison within it was emitted. The poisonous spirit banner was a good item, as it could suppress the opponent's strength. Therefore, Xiaoyang had the same idea, to use the opponent's methods to deal with the opponent. Let them have a taste of the poisonous spirit banner. In a head-on clash, Nangong City's chances of winning were extremely slim. Therefore, Xiaoyang had no choice but to use other methods to reduce the opponent's strength. Only then could he ensure that the battle would go smoothly and not be defeated. If Nangong City's men were brave enough, they would be able to win the battle. When Shiminju saw that Xiaoyang had directly activated the poisonous spirit banner, his eyes turned cold. He knew that this guy was stubborn and he had to fight. You're courting death. As Shiminju spoke, his voice became much gloomier. Such a situation was indeed something that he did not expect. However, Since he had already come to this stage, there was no reason for him to avoid it. It was just a big battle. What was there to be afraid of? Xiao Yang did not want to continue talking nonsense. He was afraid that the more he spoke, the more Shimin City's men would react and come up with a new strategy. Therefore, if he took action earlier, he could still catch them off guard. Good lad. You dare to show off in front of an expert. Do you think that you can control the poisonous spirit banner just because you know the chant? At this moment, a sinister old man stood out and sneered. At a glance, Xiaoyang recognized him. He was the sect leader of the 10,000 Poison sect, Yu Tianzheng. The poisonous spirit banner was personally given to Zhao Yunbu by Yu Tianzheng, and he was the one who taught him how to use it. Therefore, Zhao Yunbu could use it. Looking at Yu Tianzheng, Xiaoyang smiled calmly. He wanted to see which one of them was more powerful. Chapter 3038. Yu Tianzheng took a step forward and formed a seal with both hands. The poisonous spirit banner suddenly stopped above Xiaoyang's head, as if it could not advance any further. Yu Tianzheng's lips curled into a disdainful smile. He was the leader of the 10,000 Poison sect, and the poisonous spirit banner had been in his hands for thousands of years. The depth of his research was also unimaginable. At this moment, Shimin-ju sneered. He could tell that the other party did not have any good methods to deal with it. Otherwise, with their character, they would not use the poisonous spirit banner against them. The real owner of the poisonous spirit banner was standing right here, and they actually dared to use this move. It was completely wishful thinking. Since the other party did not have many trump cards, Shimin-ju's state of mind became much more stable. As such, he did not have to continue to worry. As long as Yu Tianzheng regained control, he could still use the poisonous spirit banner to suppress the people of Nangong City. At that time, the battle would still be one-sided. As long as they could minimize their losses, it would be fine. After all, there were still 2 battles to come, and they had to plan carefully. When Nangong Yu saw that the poisonous spirit banner had suddenly stopped moving forward, she frowned slightly and appeared to be very worried. Although she trusted Xiaoyang's attainments in the poison Dao, the other party was the real owner. It would be extremely difficult for them to fight it out with the real owner. Perhaps it would cause even more trouble because of this. Nangong walked to the city lord's side and said, "Should we launch an attack now?" To them, it was only a matter of time before an all-out war broke out. Now that Shimin City's morale was unstable, it seemed to be the best time to make a move. Once the battle dragged on for too long, it was hard to say what kind of variables would occur. Therefore, Nangong was somewhat worried and even wanted to make a move immediately. Nangong Yu shook her head and said, "Don't be impatient. Let's see if Xiaoyang can suppress the other party." Nangong Yu was very clear that the key point now was Xiaoyang. Whether they could achieve a complete victory or not depended on Xiaoyang's performance. If they were to force a fight, the final result would only be a lose-lose situation. That was also the last resort. If they could preserve the majority of their strength, Nangong Yu would be more than happy to see it happen. After all, with their current situation, if they suffered serious losses, they would inevitably be coveted by other forces. The previous stability and the small friction between each other would be left unsettled. That was just a tacit understanding between everyone. Once the tendons and bones were damaged, those who had ulterior motives would no longer be able to sit still. It was not that the others were not ambitious, but they felt that they did not have the ability to change the overall situation, so they did not rashly start a war. Shimin-ju had planned this for decades, but when it was time to execute it, wasn't he also cautious and didn't dare to act recklessly? Sometimes, as long as one took a wrong step, the final outcome would be to be slowly whittled down to death. Xiaoyang saw that the poisonous spirit banner was descending and was about to pierce into his head. He frowned. All of a sudden, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. He wanted to see who was more skillful in a battle of magical powers with the other party. Yu Tianzheng was very proud at this moment, and there was a hint of disdain in his eyes. Yu Tianzheng even felt that Xiaoyang's brain was not working well. Under such circumstances, he still wanted to fight with him. It was undoubtedly like hitting a rock with an egg. After all, he was the real owner. However, in the next moment, Yu Tianjing's face changed because he saw that the poisonous spirit banner suddenly continued to rise. At this moment, Yu Tianjing was very shocked. He did not expect Xiaoyang to have the ability to fight with him. The poisonous spirit banner floated up and pushed towards the people in Shimen City. At this moment, Shimenju's face turned ugly as he looked at Yu Tianjing. The poisonous spirit banner was his weapon. Why was it now controlled by Xiaoyang? This was completely illogical. Or was Yu Tianjing a spy? After being stared at by Shimenju, the pressure in Yu Tianjing's heart increased. At the same time, he felt very helpless. He could not see through it and did not understand why it was like this. All of this happened too quickly, and he was almost caught off guard. What is going on? Yu Tianjing was also thinking about this question in his heart. However, he did not have an accurate answer. There seemed to be only one way in front of him, which was to fight with force and see if he could find any opportunity. Yu Tianjing was very confident about this. Lu Xinyu rubbed his chin as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Right now, how could he not want to kill Xiaoyang as soon as possible? Therefore, he was also looking for an opportunity. Nan Gongyu and the rest were smiling again. At the same time, their attention was focused on Xiaoyang. If something happened to Xiaoyang now, the situation would become very bad. It could be said that they were able to hold on until now because of Xiaoyang's ability. Therefore, no matter who wanted to deal with Xiaoyang, they would immediately rush up to stop them. Nan Gongshi and Nan Gongguang were already standing beside Xiaoyang. They were like left and right door gods protecting his safety. Seeing that Xiaoyang had gained the upper hand, their hearts were filled with joy. If the poisonous spirit banner could really suppress the other party, then the situation would change because of this. Suppress! Yu Tianjing suddenly roared, and the poisonous spirit banner immediately froze in place, unable to move. Yu Tianjing formed a seal with both hands, and a thin layer of sweat could be seen on his forehead. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. He did not expect this young man to be so powerful. In the blink of an eye, he could control his poisonous spirit banner. It was as if Xiaoyang was the owner of the poisonous spirit banner. When he looked at Xiaoyang again, he still looked relaxed. It was as if these things were easy for him, and he did not need to spend any energy at all. Both sides were a little nervous. At the same time, they were cheering in their hearts, hoping that they could win. It could be said that the battle between them would have a great impact on the battle later on. Other than them, the rest did not know much about the poison Dao. It was easy for them to be at a disadvantage. Therefore, the side that won would also fight for a dominant position, and even control the method of victory. Chapter 3039. Xiaoyang was still in an unhurried state and appeared very indifferent. It was as if this seemingly intense battle that would decide many things was just a small matter in his eyes. He did not take it to heart at all. Such calmness and composure made the people of Westgate City feel a great pressure. Shimenju felt that since this young man was good at scheming, he was probably just putting on an act now. Even if he had some understanding of the poison gu technique, it was impossible for him to be as familiar as Yu Tianjing. However, Yu Tianjing could not say anything. He was now beginning to doubt whether this poisonous spirit banner was personally created by Xiaoyang. Now he was relying entirely on his previous understanding and familiarity to barely compete with Xiaoyang. However, this could only ensure that the poisonous spirit banner did not lean towards either side. It seemed that the battle between the two of them had reached a stalemate where no one could do anything to the other. They could only stare at each other and see who had the better patience. Previously, Yu Tianjing could still clamor and laugh at the other party for not knowing what was good for him and being bold. However, now it seemed that the other party was clearly prepared and was not weak. Yu Tianjing took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, "May I know which side you are from?" Since the other party was so familiar with the poisonous spirit banner, Yu Tianjing could not help but wonder if the other party was related to the 10,000 Poison sect. Or rather, the other party's master was from the 10,000 Poison sect. What do you think? Xiao Yang asked with a contemptuous smile. Yu Tianjing frowned slightly. Looking at the arrogant young man, he was even more displeased. However, thinking that the other party could control the poisonous spirit banner, he could only let it go. Fellow Taoist's control of the poisonous spirit banner is also perfect. It is difficult to determine the winner between the two of us. Therefore, I can't help but wonder if you are related to our 10,000 Poison sect. When the time comes, it will not be good to hurt the harmony. At the end of the day, we are of the same lineage, Yu Tianjing said. When these words came out, many people were very shocked. However, looking at the situation in front of them, it seemed that it was reasonable to think so. Things happened so suddenly that it made people feel very strange. However, they had to think more about it. This matter was indeed very strange. We can't be considered to be of the same lineage as you. After all, I only cultivate the poison Tao to become stronger. However, you used it to harm others. That's because your Tao is different. Xiao Yang sneered. Yu Tianjing frowned slightly when he heard this. His words had completely painted the 10,000 Poison sect in a bad light. Your Excellency, please be more courteous. It's not appropriate for you to be like this, Yu Tianjing said angrily. Xiao Yang was amused when he heard this. These guys didn't dare to admit that they had done something bad. Then, Xiao Yang exerted a little force, and the poisonous spirit banner continued to move forward. When they saw this scene, the complexion of everyone in Shimin City changed drastically. They didn't expect that the other party still had the strength to push the poisonous spirit banner. This was simply too terrifying. Or could it be that he didn't use any strength in the previous confrontation and was just playing around? So powerful. Nangong Jiu could not help but say in admiration. This was indeed beyond his expectations. He had no choice but to be convinced by such means. Now, Nangong Jiu finally understood why the city lord was so respectful to this guest. Even though he was only a 6th-level martial king, when he displayed these means, even a 7th-level powerhouse would find it difficult to compare. When he thought of this, Nangong Jiu felt that he was a little old and muddle-headed. He couldn't see how powerful the young people these days were. Nangong Yu smiled and said, Xiao Yang is so powerful. It can be seen how powerful the power behind him is. When he heard this speculation, Nangong Jiu couldn't help but gasp. Such a young talent could naturally be compared to Mingjun. Could it be that Xiao Yang had a terrifying existence, as strong as the 2 sects behind him? When he thought of this, Nangong Jiu's heart calmed down. If that was the case, things would become much simpler. When the time came, if they really angered Xiao Yang, he could invite the experts from the sects to destroy the small Shimin city with a flick of his finger. However, the thought was soon dismissed, as it was unrealistic. Once the top experts from the other worlds came to the bright curse realm, the experts from the 2 sects would not sit still. Therefore, when the time came, more things would be involved, and a fight might even break out. If the conflict between the 2 cities turned into a war between the 2 worlds, Nangong City would suffer a crushing defeat. Therefore, it would be best if they could win here. There was no need to force anything. Xiao Yang did not use his full strength. He only used half of his strength. At the same time, Xiao Yang could not help but admit his opponent's strength. He initially thought that after erasing some of the seals, he would no longer be able to control the poisonous spirit banner. Unexpectedly, there were still some details that were overlooked. However, this was not important. It was not a bad idea to exhaust Yu Tianjing's strength. After all, Yu Tianjing was a 7th-level martial king. Even though he was not good at fighting head-on, he could not be underestimated. At this moment, Yu Tianjing felt extremely helpless. He did not expect Xiao Yang's strength to be so dominating. Moreover, he felt very powerless now. If he continued to be in a deadlock, he might have to expend more and more energy. However, looking at his opponent's calm expression. It was as if he did not need to expend any energy at all. This kind of situation made Yu Tianjing feel even more uncomfortable in his heart. In the next moment, with a glance, a few people from the 10,000 Poisons sect stood out. They formed hand seals and chanted chants to control the poisonous spirit banner. They did not believe that, by working together, they would not be able to defeat a single person. As expected, the poisonous spirit banner that was advancing suddenly vibrated violently and began to move toward Nangong City. Immediately, the anxious hearts of Shimen City's people were slightly relieved. On the other hand, Nangong City was extremely nervous. None of them could help Xiaoyang. At this moment, Xiaoyang was having a hard time as well. Trying to fight against an entire sect by himself, no matter how you look at it, was a fantasy. It could even be said that it was something that was almost impossible. If he had absolute strength, he would not need to worry about them. However, the problem was that Xiaoyang was not too far away from them. His previous confidence was only because he was slightly further along the path of poison and had a deeper understanding of it. Now, his opponent was able to make up for the difference in numbers, and not all of them were involved. Chapter 3040. In the blink of an eye, the poisonous spirit banner spun on the spot again, as if it did not know whether to advance or retreat. The power between the two was entangled endlessly, as if no one was willing to let go. They were evenly matched. Everyone who was watching this scene was trembling in fear. The situation had changed too quickly. A strange magic weapon had indeed affected the situation of this battle to a great extent. It could be said that whoever won the confrontation between the two sides would have an easier time in the following battles. Everyone was even more nervous. It seemed that the outcome was about to be revealed. Many people could not help but subconsciously hold their breaths, as if waiting for the end to come. At this moment, the psychological pressure on Yu Tianjing and the others was extremely huge. At the same time, they sighed. This young man was indeed a peaceful person. Under the control of the poisonous spirit banner, he was actually so powerful. It was simply incomprehensible. Right now, they were all fighting with their lives on the line, but they were only evenly matched with Xiaoyang. Why was this so? If they continued to be entangled, what would the result be? At this moment, Yu Tianjing recalled that his heart-devouring cicada was taken out by this person. From this, he could imagine that the other party's attainments in the poison way were very high. It wasn't so easy to capture them. Therefore, there were many things that needed to be done. Looking at the poisonous spirit banner that was constantly spinning on the spot, Xiaoyang frowned slightly. The magic weapon had almost reached its limit. If it continued to be in a stalemate, it was afraid that it would collapse on the spot. It was not easy to refine such a magic weapon. Immediately, Xiaoyang snorted coldly and immediately formed a seal. In the blink of an eye, the poisonous spirit banner flew back to his hand. It seems that relying on this thing, we can't determine the winner, Xiaoyang said with a smile. At the same time, Xiaoyang also put away the poisonous spirit banner. Since they could not determine the winner here, they naturally had to start from other places. Yu Tianjing's expression became very ugly. The other party could still safely put away the poisonous spirit banner. It was obvious that he had not used his full strength before. As for why he put it away, it was probably because he was worried that the poisonous spirit banner would shatter on the spot. Yu Tianjing cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're truly capable." It was also Yu Tianjing's first time encountering such a formidable opponent, and he was even weaker. This made him realize that his opponent's understanding of poison was extremely terrifying. Xiaoyang just smiled faintly and didn't say anything. All of a sudden, Xiaoyang had a thought and said with a smile, "You want to learn? I'll teach you." A trace of joy flashed across Yu Tianjing's face when he heard that. He had been stuck on the path of poison goo for a long time, unable to make any progress. However, the young man in front of him obviously knew more. If he could learn something from him, he might be able to break through the shackles and advance further. in order to reach a higher position. Even if he had to become this young man's disciple, it didn't seem like a big deal. As long as you are willing to help us get rid of Shimin City, I will teach you everything I know. You should be able to sense it. In terms of poison path, even if you all attack together, you're also not as formidable as me, Xiaoyang said coolly. This was not Xiaoyang bragging. It was just that the poison scripture he cultivated was the pinnacle. Naturally, he was much stronger than them. Suddenly, the faces of Shiminju and the others changed drastically. They were able to reduce their losses to the minimum and start the war by relying on the strange means of 10,000 poison sect. If they betrayed them now, they would be the ones having a headache next. At this moment, Shiminju was also very annoyed in his heart. At the same time, he was also prepared. If Yu Tianzheng and the others really wanted to betray them, then he would kill them immediately with thunderous means. Yu Tianzheng suddenly smiled and said, "Although our means seem despicable in the eyes of others, we can't act like this." Moreover, Yu Tianzheng and the others really wanted to establish themselves in the Bright Curse realm, so they had to rely on the prestige of Shimin City. Otherwise, how could they cooperate with Shimin City? The supply-demand relationship between them was so simple and also very stable. Even though Yu Tianzheng really wanted to go further, he felt that it was still inappropriate to betray his allies. Hearing this, Xiaoyang smiled and nodded with satisfaction. If the other party directly and decisively betrayed Shimin City, then Xiaoyang would not dare to teach these people. If they directly rebelled, it could be seen that they had no bottom line in the face of power. Since they could turn against Shimin City today, they would do the same with Xiaoyang in the future. As long as an even more powerful person appeared, there would be a change in everything. Shiminju also nodded very happily. It seemed that the allies they chose this time were not bad. What other means do you have? Continue to take them out, so that I can see what you're capable of, Xiaoyang said with a smile. Yu Tianzheng pressed one hand on his waist, as if he really had some other means to take out. Their 10,000 poison sect had 3 great treasures, and the poisonous spirit banner was only one of them. There were still 2 that had not been taken out. But at this moment, Yu Tianjing hesitated, because he thought that since the poisonous spirit banner could be taken by the other party, would the other 2 treasures be the same? Once he took them out, the treasures of the 10,000 poisons sect might become Xiaoyang's personal collection. Thinking of this, Yu Tianjing frowned even more. He was now very conflicted. In this battle, they had lost the poisonous spirit banner, and the winner had also been decided. Their 10,000 poisons sect could not be compared to Xiaoyang. Even if they still had some trump cards, what was the use of taking them out? Most likely, there was almost no use, and these things would fall into the hands of the other party in the end. After a few hesitations in his heart, Yu Tianzheng could only give up in the end. It did not matter if they lost now, but if the treasures of the sect were taken by Xiaoyang, then the strength of their sect would be greatly reduced. Moreover, such an action was no different from supporting the enemy. Brother, I am ashamed of my inferiority. Yu Tianzheng smiled bitterly and shook his head with a sigh. There was nothing he could do. Since he was inferior to the other party, he had to admit it. There was no need to do those meaningless things. Seeing this, Shiminju's expression suddenly became more hesitant. He glanced at Yu Tianzheng and thought that it was good that he did not betray them straight away. However, in this case, the contribution of the 10,000 poisons sect in the battle with Nangong Cheng would be very little. As a result, the casualties of Shimin City would be greater. After seeing this, Xiaoyang stretched his body and said, "Since you guys are at your wits' end, why don't you see what I have to offer?" Chapter 3041. After hearing this, Yu Tianjing frowned his eyebrows. At the same time, he was curious to see what Xiaoyang had up his sleeves. Although Yu Tianjing did not think that he had a way to deal with the situation, he might be able to figure out his opponent's background. Besides, most of the elites of their sect were here, so they might be able to find a way to deal with the situation. Therefore, the situation remained the same, and it was not a problem. Shimin-ju glanced at Yu Tianzheng and did not rush to make his move. He was curious to see what kind of trouble they could stir up. Nan Gongyu, Nan Gongjiu, and the rest were excited after seeing this. They felt that Xiao Yang's move would definitely affect the situation of the battle. Besides, since he was the one who initiated the attack, the power of the attack would definitely be extraordinary. If they were able to suppress the entire Westgate city, then the amount of manpower and power they would need to expend would be much less. If they could achieve a complete victory, why would they want to achieve a Pyrrhic victory? Following this, Xiao Yang performed a hand seal, and a black lotus flew out from the bag, slowly flying into the air. The petals of the black lotus looked like jade, giving off a comfortable feeling at first glance, as if they wanted to possess it for themselves. At the same time, the lotus seemed to be emitting a unique aura, causing one to be unable to stop looking at it, causing one to feel extremely joyful. It seemed to be the same as being fascinated by it. Stay calm, don't be affected by it. Xiao Yang transmitted his voice to the people of Nangong City with a secret technique. At that instant, Nangong Yong and Nangong Xiao felt like they were awakened, as they were covered in cold sweat. They had a strange feeling just now, and now that they were awakened by Xiao Yang's warning, they felt extremely scared. If they were to be immersed in it, they would not know what kind of changes would happen to them. Besides, they had already consumed the special pills given by Xiao Yang, which were able to alleviate the effects. If they were to take a few more glances at it, they would not know how bad the effects would be. The people of Shimin City stared at the black lotus curiously. Some of the cultivators with lower cultivation bases and weaker minds even took a step forward, as if they were being summoned by something, and walked forward step by step. It was as if the great Tao lay beneath their feet, and as long as they walked over, they would be able to attain the Tao. Yu Tianzheng also noticed this strange change. At the same time, he also formed a few hand seals and began to break the other party's method. But for a while, he couldn't find any clues, so he could only use a few conventional methods to test it and see if he could find any pattern. The people of the 10,000 Poisons sect were the same. They couldn't figure out what was going on. However, when Shimin-ju saw the abnormal behavior of some of his subordinates, he felt that it was very strange. "Brother Yu, what kind of technique is this?" Shimin-ju asked doubtfully. Even though Shimin-ju had been to many worlds, it was his first time seeing such a strange method. For the time being, he didn't find any killing power, which was why he didn't do anything. The lotus slowly rose into the air, as if it could not be offended. When Xiao Yang saw that the other party didn't have any substantial defenses, a smile appeared on his face. As long as he waited a little longer, many of the other party's cultivators would lose their minds. The more they were poisoned, the more power they could unleash would be greatly reduced. After all this was done, it would be much easier for Nangong Cheng to win this battle. At that moment, one of the younger generation couldn't keep his mind and suddenly roared, "Thief, die!" The younger generation suddenly went berserk and slashed at the person beside him. The sudden outburst caught many people off guard. With one slash, the person immediately died. At the same time, the younger generation didn't stop. It was as if he had fallen into an endless killing intent as he raised his saber and slashed, as if he wanted to kill everyone around him. At that moment, Lu Shenyu suddenly dodged and knocked out the berserk cultivator. That lotus is strange. It can disturb one's mind. Lu Shenyu hurriedly shouted. At that moment, the cultivators who weren't completely immersed in it all guarded their minds, not daring to be careless. Sometimes, when they felt comfortable, they didn't care that it was just a trap. Once they fell into it, it would be difficult to turn back. That's the Moe Jade Lotus. Yu Tianzheng suddenly thought of something and shouted. At the same time, Yu Tianzheng also shook his head. He didn't think it was real. The ancient books of the 10,000 Poisons sect did have records of the Moe Jade Lotus, but he had been to many places and never heard anything about it. All along, he thought that this treasure had disappeared, or even cease to exist. He didn't expect to see it here today. Everyone, guard your minds. Don't let it disturb you. Otherwise, once you start hallucinating, you won't be able to distinguish between friend and foe, and will only become a killing machine. Yu Tianjing's mouth twitched. At the same time, Yu Tianjing also knew another thing, which was the power of the Moe Jade Lotus. Wherever the Moe Jade Lotus was, once a cultivator got close, they would unknowingly lose their minds and kill each other. In the end, when they were about to die, they would fall around the Moe Jade Lotus and become nourishment for the poison. Under such nourishment, the Moe Jade Lotus would become even stronger. Therefore, this kind of poison was also not tolerated by the world. It was too dangerous. Once a powerful person saw it, they would immediately destroy it. He didn't expect that Xiaoyang actually had this thing in his hands. Yu Tianjing didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately used his means to seal his perception and protect his divine soul, and quickly flew toward the Moe Jade Lotus. As long as he took that thing, the crisis would naturally be resolved. Moreover, he, Yu Tianjing, had lost the poisonous spirit banner. If he could get the legendary Moe Jade Lotus this time, this exchange would not be a loss no matter how he looked at it. Shiminju looked at Xiaoyang with a murderous look in his eyes. He didn't expect this young man to use such vicious means. It was indeed unexpected. However, since the other party dared to use such means, he couldn't be blamed for being rude. At the same time, Lu Xinyu also looked at Xiaoyang. It could be said that Xiaoyang was the backbone. As long as he was defeated, everything would come to an end. Now was the time to settle the old and new grudges. They couldn't rely on the 10,000 Poisons sect now, so it seemed that they had no other choice but to attack. The 10,000 Poisons sect could be said to have suffered a crushing defeat in this battle. Chapter 3042. At this moment, Yu Tianjing was also very clear in his heart that if he couldn't take the Moe Jade Lotus now, when this thing continued to emit poison, many cultivators in Shimin City would be deeply harmed, and their combat power would be greatly reduced. There were even some people with low cultivation realms and weak minds who had already begun to attack each other. If it wasn't for Lu Xinyu's sharp eyes and quick hands, who knew what would have happened? However, Lu Xinyu's killing spree made some people from the Shimin Gate city's ancestral family very unhappy. This kind of behavior was completely unable to distinguish between priority and priority. But now, everyone was suppressing the impact of the Moe Jade Lotus on them, so they didn't pursue the matter immediately. Instead, they remembered this grudge in their hearts. When this matter was over, they would definitely ask clearly what right he had to do this, to kill the people of Shimin City as he pleased. At this moment, Xiaoyang looked indifferent as he watched Yu Tianjing walk towards the Moe Jade Lotus. The Moe Jade Lotus had long been refined by Xiaoyang, and he had already made it his own. Therefore, if Yu Tianjing wanted to do something to it, it was undoubtedly a fool's dream. It was completely impossible. No matter what you did, Xiaoyang really didn't lose to anyone in the Poison Dao. Even their poison spirit banner fell into Xiaoyang's hands, and the other party couldn't take it back. This was the huge gap in their Poison Dao. The Moe Jade Lotus was still glowing with black light. It was very demonic. With just a glance, it made people feel very magical and wanted to touch it. At this moment, the scene in front of Yu Tianjing had changed drastically. His eyes were also filled with yearning, and he wanted to hold the black lotus in his arms. It was as if as long as he held it in his hands, he would be the only one in the world. Shimin City, the two sects, as long as he could hold this lotus, then no one in the entire bright curse world would be his opponent. The eternal hegemony seemed to be within reach. He just needed to take a step forward, and he would be able to obtain it. Yu Tianjing brought the elites of 10,000 Poison Sect to the bright curse world to cultivate a lower sect in this land. However, if an outsider wanted to establish his own sect in the bright curse realm, it was almost impossible. Therefore, they had no choice but to rely on Westgate City and use their influence to support the 10,000 Poisons sect to gain a firm foothold here. However, with the Moe Jade Lotus, he would have absolute power. The rules were set by the powerful. When the time came, Yu Tianzheng would be able to break the rules and rebuild the rules. At that time, the bright curse realm would also become his possession. Such yearning and ambition allowed Yu Tianzheng to see an incomparably beautiful future. Everything was right in front of him, and it did not seem difficult to realize it. Seeing the drastic change in Yu Tianzheng's expression, Xiaoyang also revealed a trace of a smile. As long as this guy lost his mind, Shiminju would lose an arm. It could be said that the 10,000 Poisons sect was Shimin City's greatest reliance because their actions were strange, and their methods were even more profound. The heart-devouring cicada that they gave even the bright curse world's miracle doctor was helpless. From this, it could be seen how powerful they were. With their help, they could easily take down the other forces without much effort. Shiminju did not notice the change in Yu Tianzheng's eyes, but his gaze fell on Xiaoyang. This person was only in the 6th rank, but he could defeat Lu Xinyu. Now, he even made Yu Tianzheng, this old fox, suffer. How powerful was this young man's ability? Or rather, how terrifying was he? Thinking of this, Shiminju's killing intent became even stronger. Such a dangerous person could not be used by him. And now, he had even become an enemy. Then there was only one choice, and that was to get rid of him quickly. Moreover, this young man was still relatively young no matter how one looked at him. He had a lot of room for growth. Even if they won this time, as long as this kid escaped, Shimin City would inevitably be in big trouble in the future. Therefore, if they could kill him now, there was absolutely no possibility of letting him go. Shiminju looked at the people in his sect again. All of them were in a difficult situation. Those who were in a higher realm were still fine, and it seemed like they were not affected much. However, those who were in a lower realm were very uncomfortable. Moreover, more and more people were losing their minds. Although Lu Xinyu knocked those people out when their minds were about to collapse, the speed was not fast. Therefore, the root of everything was that lotus. If they could get rid of that thing, then things would be much easier. "What are you doing?" Shiminju roared. Yu Tianzheng was only 3 steps away from the Moe Jade Lotus, but he stood on the spot without any movement. In a trance, Shiminju also had a bad feeling in his heart. Perhaps Yu Tianzheng was already affected, so he did not do anything. Such a technique was indeed strange and impossible to guard against. Seeing this, Nangongyu's heart was almost bursting with joy. Shimin City could be said to be aggressive, but they were played in the palm of Xiaoyang's hand. It was as if the other party had the power but could not use it. They looked very sullen and wanted to do something, but it was undoubtedly like a fool's dream. It was impossible. At the same time, Nangongyu also felt that the money she spent was very worth it. If Nangong City went to fight with Shimin City, they might be played by Yu Tianzheng and end up in a sullen state. Nangongjiu and the rest did not know Xiaoyang's methods before, and many things could be said to be from hearsay. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, their hearts calmed down and they were full of admiration. This young man's methods were really brilliant and powerful. The effect that he had displayed could be said to have covered everyone. There were so many almighties in Shimin City, but would they dare to act rashly? To be able to stop such a big force alone, the ability and courage that he had was naturally indispensable. Shimin Ju secretly clenched his fist, and his gaze became much more sinister. As the family head, he naturally could not allow such a situation to continue. Otherwise, if the stalemate continued, the outcome would be very difficult to predict. At least, he had to break the stalemate and solve the problem in front of him first. He could not just sit and wait for death. Otherwise, it would be like boiling a frog in warm water and a slow death. In the next moment, Shiminju moved and directly charged toward Xiaoyang. As long as he killed Xiaoyang, anything could be done. Chapter 3043. At this moment, Shiminju's thoughts were very pure. From his point of view, as long as he could take down Xiaoyang, everything would go back on track and he would no longer have to worry. As long as he could kill the person with the most powerful means, Nangong City would no longer have any obstacles. At that time, everyone could attack together and forcefully flatten Nangong City. That would be possible. After all, with their current strength, it would not be difficult for them to do so. The reason why they did not make a move and were even being suppressed was because of that young man. Shiminju did not know what was so strange about the Black Lotus that even Yu Tianzheng was defeated by it. Hence, he did not dare to act rashly. Since he could not do anything to the poisonous thing, he could also kill the person who cast the spell. At that time, the so-called skill would lose its source, and in the end, it would only end up in a situation where it could not be attacked. When Xiaoyang saw that Shiminju had suddenly charged towards him, he frowned slightly. Now that he wanted to control Yu Tianzheng, he had to place his consciousness into the Moe Jade Lotus. However, if that was the case, wanting to deal with Shiminju was clearly a fool's dream. It was simply an impossible matter. However, once he went to deal with Shiminju with Yu Tianjing's cultivation, he would be the first to wake up. By then, it would be almost impossible to control him. Old man Shimin, since you can't afford to play, I'll play with you. Nangong Yu suddenly shouted and dashed toward Shiminju as fast as lightning. Nangong Yu was not stupid. Now that the key to victory was Xiaoyang, he naturally could not be disturbed. Hence, he had to stand out and stop his opponent. Furthermore, Nangong Yu already had a lot of grievances against Shiminju. Now that there was a great opportunity to vent, how could he miss it? In the past, he had a big fight with Shiminju. However, he was schemed against and was at a disadvantage, almost losing his life. However, this time, Nangong Yu did not care so much. He only wanted to determine the winner between him and Shiminju. He even wanted to kill him to vent the hatred in his heart. It was Shiminju's scheme that caused Nangong Yu to be tortured by the heart-devouring cicada for dozens of years. Fortunately, he was mentally strong. Otherwise, if he was an ordinary person, he would have broken down long ago, not to mention standing here and leading the overall situation. In addition, Shiminju's method was also very vicious. It could be said that it was time to settle the old and new grudges. When Shiminju saw Nangong Yu rushing over, he immediately frowned. It was impossible for him to bypass Nangong Yu and kill Xiaoyang directly. Of course, he could choose to go all out of the way. However, Shiminju knew very well that if he had really done that, even if he could kill Xiaoyang, he would still be mercilessly killed by Nangong Yu. Shiminju, of course, and he would have you to leave this place. From Shiminju's point of view, as long as he left with Nangong Yu, there would be people pouncing on Xiaoyang continuously until they killed him. As long as Xiaoyang died, Nangong Cheng's advantage would be gone in an instant. It would be meaningless. At that time, under the overall situation, their chances of victory would increase again. However, it would not be easy to succeed. Seeing Nangong Yu charging out, Xiaoyang's lips curled into a smile. As long as Nangong Cheng could buy him enough time, he could reduce Nangong Cheng's losses. At this moment, Yu Tianzheng was unable to extricate himself from the illusion created by Xiaoyang using the Moe Jade Lotus. It would not take long for him to lose his mind. Even if Yu Tianjing's battle strength was not very strong, he was still a rank 7 powerhouse. Furthermore, he was good at using poison. This alone was extremely terrifying. If he could lose his mind, he would definitely become a great killing machine. Lu Xinyu squinted his eyes as he looked at the unfamiliar yet familiar opponent. His lips curled into a helpless smile. Previously, he had been tricked due to his carelessness. Hence, he felt that this was a great opportunity to defeat him. After all, there were not many opportunities like this. If he missed this opportunity, it would be hard to find another one in the future. Although it was not a good idea to mix personal grudges in such a situation, no matter how one looked at it, killing Xiaoyang was the safest choice. It was the best choice to help them win this battle. As he thought of this, Lu Xinyu gave a look. Instantly, a few almighties seemed to have sensed something and understood what he meant. Lu Xinyu was very clear that it was useless to continue being a patchwork at the back. Every problem had to be solved from the root. Only then could it be solved quickly. In the next moment, Lu Xinyu took the lead and charged toward Xiaoyang. As long as he took down Xiaoyang, everything would be over for Nangongqing. Die. Lu Xinyu's heart was filled with extremely ruthless killing intent. Although he was not going to defeat him head-on, why should he care? After all, this was a battle between two forces. It was not a one-on-one battle or a Dao-seeking battle. Seeing Lu Xinyu charging towards him, Xiaoyang was not moved. He was still very calm. This made Lu Xinyu feel a little strange. At the same time, he was also a little frightened. He felt that with Xiaoyang's personality, he should not be like this. This guy had always been ruthless and meticulous. For him to be so calm, it was impossible for him not to be prepared. In the next moment, Lu Xinyu felt a dangerous aura rapidly approaching him. At the same time, he felt a chill run down his back as if he felt a great threat. He was terrified. The chill from the life force made Lu Xinyu not dare to rashly attack. Instead, he stood in place and formed a spell to prepare for defense. Layers of spiritual power surged out and wrapped around Lu Xinyu. However, a heavy blow directly knocked him to the ground. In an instant, a man in a black robe appeared in the sky. Xing Tian glanced at Lu Xinyu with disdain, and a smile appeared on his face. Xing Tian also knew how powerful Lu Xinyu was, so he was the first to choose an opponent. He also launched a sneak attack and succeeded. However, because Lu Xinyu was cautious, he did not directly defeat him. This made Xing Tian feel a little helpless. However, it did not matter. The other party was already injured. It was not difficult to take him down. At the same time, many almighties swarmed toward Xiaoyang. Chapter 3044. The powerful cultivators of Shimen City clearly knew that the reason why they were in such a predicament was because Xiaoyang had single-handedly turned the tables around. Therefore, there was only one option left for them to achieve victory, which was to kill Xiaoyang. At least, they could not allow him to continue his plan. Or else, if the situation were to continue, it would be hard to tell what would happen next. Seeing the powerful cultivators charging at him, and some of them even unleashing their skills and weapons, Nangong Bashan continued to exert his power to pressure the cultivators of Shimen City. Now that he was the one in control of the situation, he could not afford to act recklessly. Therefore, his only choice was to continue on like this. At the same time, Xiaoyang believed that under such circumstances, the people of Nangong City were not idiots. They should know what they had to do in order to win the battle. In the next moment, Nangong Jiu was the first one to step forward and stood in front of Xiaoyang and used his skills to block the attacks. Nangong Shi, Nangong Guang, and the others all charged toward the cultivators of Shimen City. A huge battle could be said to have been ignited because of this fuse. Anyone in Shimen City who could still endure it all rushed out to fight, swarming toward Xiaoyang. Kill! Nangong Xiao suddenly let out a furious roar and charged forward too. The final battle was about to begin. The people of Nangong City were extremely courageous due to their grievances and could not wait to kill all their opponents. Sun Yi had also joined the ranks of the battle. In this battle, no one would be able to escape by luck. Moreover, Sun Yi knew very well that if he wanted to protect himself, he could not just stand by and watch. Even though Nangong City had Xiaoyang's help, there was still a 90% chance that they could win against Shimen City. Therefore, under such a premise, he was also very clear about what he should do to make this battle easier to win. If he did not do his best, he would be held responsible after the battle was over. There might not be any punishment on the surface, but there might be a huge change in the city lord's heart. Such a change was also irreversible. Sun Yi had always been cautious. At the same time, he was able to distinguish the subtleties of the current situation. He knew when he should do something to protect himself. In this aspect, Sun Yi's sense of smell was very sensitive. Furthermore, they had gone through thick and thin together with Nan Gongqing in this battle. If they managed to survive this, the Nangong clan would surely treat them well in the future. In an instant, battle cries rang out endlessly. The eruption of power instantly caused Yun Gudu to be affected in varying degrees. Countless cultivators were locked in battle, and there were also experts who fought and killed each other. For example, Xing Tian had captured Lu Xinyu and fought him one-on-one. Between Nan Gongyu and Shiminju, each of their techniques were used frequently. It could be said that they were fighting to their heart's content. Shiminju's eyes were also filled with hatred and viciousness. He said in a stern voice, "Nan Gongyu, I didn't expect your luck to be so good. You can encounter such an expert to help you." From Shiminju's point of view, this matter should be in the bag. However, with Xiao Yang's appearance, the situation was completely broken. This caused the Shimin clan's great situation to vanish in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, they were being suppressed everywhere. How would Shiminju feel about this? From Shiminju's point of view, Nan Gongqing was the easiest to take down. Hence, he was the first to strike. However, who would have thought that he would step on a tough nut to crack? Now that the battle had completely broken out, it was impossible to stop it. Hence, they could only fight. Shiminju felt that he had many talents under him. There was no reason for him to lose to Nan Gongqing. However, after this battle, Shimin clan would most likely suffer a great loss. Hence, their plan to take over the other two cities would have to be delayed. Haha, old man Shimin, you only know how to tempt others with benefits. You don't even know what charisma is. I, Nan Gongyu, am a straightforward person. How many men are not attracted to me? Hence, I am just a righteous person. As Nan Gongyu spoke, her smile became even wider. Of course, that was the reason why Xiao Yang went to Nan Gongqing. The governor of Nan Gongqing was straightforward. Secondly, it was because the distance was closer. It was also because Nan Gongyu's character was not bad. Xiao Yang felt that she was not bad. Hence, he took the risk to help her. If it was someone else, it would be impossible for Xiao Yang to take the risk to help them. Sometimes, even if one was doing business, one had to choose a trustworthy person to do it for him. Like Shiminju, who used benefits to tempt others, it was hard to say whether it would be a blessing or a curse in the future. Upon hearing this, Shiminju laughed coldly. From his point of view, all of this was just a lie. Even if you, Nan Gongyu, have charisma in this world, what does that count for? Good lad, under your management, Nan Gongqing has become the weakest among the 4 cities. Impressive, impressive. Shiminju sneered. At this moment, Shiminju felt much better. This was just fortune for fools. It was impossible for one Xiaoyang to change the situation. So what if Shimincheng was suppressed now? That was only temporary. In an all-out war, the people of Shimincheng only needed to endure this period of time. Once Xiaoyang was interrupted, everything would return to normal immediately. At the same time, Shiminju was also very confused. Why did the people of Nan Gongqing not seem to be affected by the Moe Jade Lotus? Hence, he was very helpless. However, Shiminju could not care less about these things now. It was more strenuous for him to fight with Nan Gongyu now. Shiminju was more or less affected by the Moe Jade Lotus, but he used his strength to suppress it. As a result, his battle prowess was unavoidably reduced. As a result, he was able to fight to a draw with this Nan Gongyu who had not fully recovered for several decades. If there was no interference, the current Nan Gongyu would definitely not be a match for Shiminju. However, such an advantage was still there. Shiminju's heart was filled with hatred. As long as he took down Nan Gongyu, the people of Nan Gongqing would definitely lose their morale, or even be utterly defeated. It seemed like the key to victory was still in the hands of Shiminju from another perspective. On the other side, a cultivator in black robes quietly approached in the midst of the battle. Chapter 3045. When Xiaoyang saw the man in black approaching the Moe Jade Lotus, he frowned and formed a hand seal. Yu Tianzheng immediately turned around and pounced towards the man in black. With the Moe Jade Lotus as a medium, Xiaoyang could barely control Yu Tianzheng, but he could not control him completely. In Yu Tianzheng's eyes, the man in black was no longer a comrade, but an enemy with a blood feud. He wanted nothing more than to cut the man into pieces and grind his bones to dust. When the man in black saw Yu Tianzheng charging towards him, he could not help but shudder. At first, he thought that if everyone rushed toward Xiaoyang, they would definitely be beaten back by Nangongcheng. Plus, Nangongcheng was not stupid. He knew that protecting Xiaoyang was the key to victory. Therefore, he could only choose to take a step back and see if he could destroy or severely injure the weapon. As long as the weapon could no longer be used, the people in Ximen City would not be affected at all. If they could recover their full strength, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for them to flatten Nangongcheng? However, he did not know that Xiaoyang's attention had always been on the Moe Jade Lotus. After all, this item was the key to victory. Therefore, how could Xiaoyang be careless about it? Furthermore, all of his attention was on it. He would not give his opponent any chance. Xiaoyang recognized this person from Zhang Xuanji's soul. This person was the leader of the Xianshui sect, Lu Xiang. Lu Xiang was a powerhouse in the 7th level. He could be said to be a tough nut to crack. In the 3rd, 6th, and 9th level, although Lu Xiang might not be the top 9, the effect that he could display was not far off. Because Lu Xiang could not improve in his own world, he set his sights on the Bright Curse Realm. It was naturally not a problem for him to enter the Bright Curse Realm as an outsider, but he also had his own dignity and pride. In his own world, he could be said to be the strongest existence. It was impossible for him to live under someone else's roof. Therefore, he chose to cooperate with Ximen City to gain a foothold in the Bright Curse Realm. At this moment, Lu Xiang could be said to have a headache. Seeing his former colleagues attacking him like crazy, he couldn't do anything. If they were ruthless, Yu Tianzheng's losses would be great. However, if Yu Tianzheng was seriously injured, he would most likely be of no use in the next operation. At that time, many of their plans would have to be delayed. After some things were exposed, it was very easy for people to make groundless accusations, and the following actions would inevitably be greatly affected. Therefore, Lu Xiang was having a headache right now. He also wanted to settle the battle as soon as possible, but with the current situation, it was more or less unrealistic. In fact, it could even be said that it was something that was completely impossible. If one wanted to settle it, it would be extremely difficult. As such, Lu Xiang's heart could be said to be even more complicated. He did not know how to deal with this matter. Damn it! You, Yu Tianzheng, are at any rate a poison path expert, but today you were schemed against by a junior until you were black and blue all over. Lu Xiang gnashed his teeth in hatred as he said, if it wasn't for Xiaoyang, they would have already reached the end of the battle if they continued under normal circumstances. Under the influence of Yu Tianzheng's methods, Nangongcheng's battle power would be greatly reduced, and they would be able to take advantage of this to directly charge in and even win this battle. But now, it seemed like it was just wishful thinking, and it was simply impossible to achieve. Thinking of this, Lu Xiang could not wait to directly beat this guy up. Yu Tianzheng continued to attack, and because Lu Xiang's hands and feet were tied, he could only continue to be in a stalemate, passively defending, and did not dare to be ruthless. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, was sitting on top of the mountain and watching the tigers fight. Right now, he only needed to continue controlling the Moe Jade Lotus. Now, under his oppression, Ximen City had lost at least 30% of their battle power. Such a contribution in a battle was immeasurable. Sometimes, even if only 10% of their battle power was lost, it would cause the overall situation to tilt, and even cause a great advantage to be lost completely. Now, when the people of Ximen City saw Xiaoyang, their hearts were filled with fear. It was as if he was a demon, becoming a nightmare in their hearts that they could not get rid of. Those cultivators with low cultivation bases and weak wills even lost themselves, treating their comrades as their enemies, and began to kill each other. The smell of blood quickly spread throughout the entire Cloud Valley, and the scene looked extremely intense. War had always been cruel. No matter what the situation was, it could happen. In war, there could not be any mercy, because sometimes not having the heart to bear would bring about serious consequences, causing more casualties to one's own side, or even the destruction of one's own side. Xiao Yang did not look at that, but instead placed all his attention on the Moe Jade Lotus. It would be enough if he could hold on for a little longer. The battle between Shimen City and Nangongqing seemed to be on par with each other, and for a moment it could be said that they were evenly matched and neither side could do anything to the other. However, the casualties continued to increase, especially on Shimen City's side, because they did not have the support of pills and did not know how to resist the influence of the Moe Jade Lotus. They could only endure. And this kind of torment could easily cause a huge change to a person's mind, or even cause them to break down. After breaking down, their minds would be affected, and the fantasies they saw would naturally cause them to do different things. They only felt that they were killing their enemies, but they did not know that those were the people close to them. It was very difficult for people who had lost their minds to realize this, and they only knew how to kill everything. It was also because of this that the people of Nangong City had their confidence boosted and displayed extraordinary battle prowess. Sometimes morale was indeed very important. Sometimes, although there was a slight difference in strength, as long as the morale was high enough, it would still affect many things. In order to obtain victory in a war, many factors played an important role. Every factor could be said to be closely linked and would affect the outcome of the battle, so they must be taken seriously. Xiao Yang was still very calm, and everything in his hands could be said to be carried out in an orderly manner. Lu Xiang saw that the situation was becoming more and more tragic, and at the same time, a trace of pain flashed across his eyes, because some of his Xianshui sect's disciples had also died because of this. Yu Tianzheng, oh Yu Tianzheng, since you can't believe it, then it's best that you don't wake up again, Lu Xiang said while clenching his teeth. Since they had already come this far, the casualties could not continue to increase, and that lotus must be broken. Chapter 3046. At this moment, Lu Xiang's heart was as firm as steel, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. He could not bypass Yu Tianjing, so all he could do was to defeat the person in front of him, then move on to the miraculous-looking lotus. That was the source of all the troubles. As long as the lotus was destroyed, everything would return to normal, and the battle strength of Westgate City would also return to its peak. Yu Tianjing acted as if he did not hear his colleague's voice. Instead, he unleashed one vicious attack after another, as if he could not wait to kill Lu Xiang. When the disciples and elders of the 10,000 Poisons sect saw their sect leader go crazy, they wanted to stop him. However, they did not have the strength to do so. This was because they knew very well how vicious their sect leader's methods were. If they were hit, the consequences would be unimaginable. Therefore, they had to be cautious at all times. Without hesitation, they entered the battlefield and began to poison Nangongqing's men. Although Xiaoyang saw all of this, his priority now was to ensure the safety of the Moe Jade Lotus. As for the people poisoned by the 10,000 Poisons sect, there was nothing he could do. Although they had consumed the pills Xiaoyang gave them before, they were used to defend against the poison of the poisonous spirit banner and the Moe Jade Lotus. As for the other poisons, although they had some protection against them, it was not very effective. War had always been cruel. In order to achieve victory, one naturally could not be bothered with temporary gains and losses. After all, sometimes it may be a small matter, but the final result would be extremely terrifying. Xiao Yang naturally had a conclusion in his heart as to which was more important. Therefore, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only grasp the situation in his hands. If he wavered because of these things without the suppression of the Moe Jade Lotus, Westgate City's attacks would only become more ferocious. When that time comes, even if Nangong Chung tried his best to resist, he would not be able to win. If that was the case, how could Xiaoyang have the chance to choose what to do? The only thing he could do now was to look after the situation. As long as Nangong Chung still had the upper hand, everything would be salvageable. Therefore, Xiaoyang had no other choice. Compared to Shimin City, Nangong City was already at a disadvantage. Only Xiaoyang was able to level the playing field. Therefore, if Nangong City were to be shaken, the balance would be tilted, and the situation would become even worse. Xiaoyang had a well-thought-out plan for the entire battle. At the same time, he also knew what to do. As long as the overall trend was still in Nangong Cheng's favor, there was still a chance to fight this war. Once there was a change, it was likely that the army would be defeated, like a landslide. Perhaps even self-preservation would become a problem. Of course, if Xiaoyang wanted to leave, together with Xing Tian, no one would be able to stop him. However, the people of Nangong City would not be able to leave this place alive, and the casualties would be extremely terrifying. Since he had received benefits from the other party, he naturally had to do his best. From afar, a cultivator stared at Xiaoyang. He could not help but want to make his move. Now that the experts of Nangong City were all involved in the battle, Xiaoyang was alone without any help. If he were to make his move now, he would have a great chance of succeeding. As for the Moe Jade Lotus floating in midair, he only took a glance at it. Speaking of which, no matter which point it was, there was a way to break it. However, in this person's opinion, the root of the problem was far more important than the surface. After all, after destroying the strange lotus, there was no telling what Xiaoyang would do next. However, as long as Xiaoyang was killed, there would be no more surprises. However, if he wanted to attack Xiaoyang, he would need to bypass the battle. In this way, his behavior would appear somewhat abnormal, and it would be easy for others to guard against him. Furthermore, would the people of Nangong City give him such a chance? All of a sudden, Xiaoyang seemed to have felt the gaze that was sizing him up. He raised his head and looked over. The two of them looked at each other and laughed. With just one look, Xiaoyang recognized the other party. It was the eldest son of the Shimin family, Shimin Dingtian. Shimin Dingtian was the true genius of the Shimin family, and it could be said that he made the city lord of Shimin City, Shiminju, decide to unify the four cities. Furthermore, Shimin Dingtian was highly rated, and in time he would definitely lead Shimin City to new heights. Therefore, Shiminju decided to be the first to raise Shimin City's status from the four cities to the third gate. When his eldest son, Shimin Dingtian, reaches that level, he might even be able to raise Shimin City to the level of the two sects. This was also Shiminju's ambition, which was why he racked his brains to do this. Although it was difficult to match the two sects, it was not completely hopeless. As long as they could develop for generations, it was not impossible. Why was the two sects unshakable? It was because of their breakneck development over the past tens of thousands of years that they had today's grand occasion. In the bright curse world, the foundation was a more important existence. However, as long as they were the first to lay the foundation, what followed would be a long period of development. If no one took the first step, then Shimin City would never be able to change. Shiminju indeed doted on his second son, but he would definitely not be careless when it came to important matters. He knew that it still depended on his eldest son's talent. The eldest son would inherit his position and become the city lord, while the second son would enjoy the doting, and they would have nothing to do with each other. Moreover, the doting was different, so they did not have anything to fight for. Looking at Shimin Dingtian, who was hailed as the hope of the Shimin family, Xiaoyang's smile widened. He wanted to meet this expert and see what kind of methods he had. At the same time, Shimin Dingtian was also curious about this powerful person who had suddenly appeared. He wanted to see if he was equally powerful other than his poison power. However, he heard from his good friend Lu Xinyu that Xiaoyang was not weak, and his scheming was also very ruthless. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. Shimin Dingtian and Lu Shenyu stood in the same position, which was why they could become good friends. Of course, Shimin Dingtian also felt that, as the elder brother, he had to avenge his younger brother. On a larger scale, in this war, Xiao Yang's role was indeed very terrifying. If they could not take him down first, it was almost impossible for Shimin City to swallow Nangong City. If they forced it, they might even choke to death. "You are Xiao Yang?" Shimin Dingtian asked as if he already knew the answer, smiling. Xiao Yang nodded slightly and said, "You are Shimin Dingtian, the person rumored to be comparable to Jun?" Chapter 3047. However, this was only a rumor in the outside world. As for what the truth was, no one could say for sure. Moreover, Shimin Dingtian's battle achievements were few. Although they were all overwhelming, there was not much to compare them to. Although his reputation was well-deserved, his ability had always been a mystery. No one knew if he could compare to the second Jun. This was because, compared to Jun, Shimin Dingtian had displayed a lot less. To a large extent, it was Westgate City that was promoting him. However, no one could say for sure what the specific situation was. However, Shimin Dingtian's 7th level martial royal realm was real. This was undeniable. From this, it could be seen that his strength was not as simple as it seemed. Regarding this, Xiao Yang frowned. At the same time, he had already made up his mind. After everything was settled, he might as well have a decisive battle with Shimin Dingtian. Only by constantly battling with these geniuses would he be able to sharpen his own cultivation and make his growth even faster. Moreover, these powerful geniuses were often hard to come by. Only by struggling between life and death would he be able to make rapid progress. Although this was undoubtedly like dancing on the tip of a knife, and one would die if he was not careful. Most of the time, the greater the price he paid, the greater the reward. Xiao Yang's journey to become stronger was closely related to the inheritance of the honorable poison master. At the same time, his own hard work could not be ignored. Similarly, he had experienced many battles, life and death situations, and challenged his own limits. Therefore, every time he won, he was able to become the Xiaoyang he was today. Nothing could be accomplished overnight. One could only take one step at a time and walk forward firmly. There was no shortcut to speak of. Even if there was a shortcut for you to take, whether or not it could meet your expectations in the end would be another matter. It seemed that no matter what, it would not be easy to achieve. Shimin Dingtian smiled faintly and said, "That's right. I just don't know if you are as powerful as Lu Shenyu said." When Xiao Yang heard this, he almost burst out laughing. Now that their Shimin city was being suppressed by a single person, could it be that they still couldn't distinguish the situation? This was undoubtedly a blatant lie, and it was completely meaningless. However, it was fine for this stalemate to continue. So long as he waited for a while longer, the effects of the Dark Sorrow Jade Lotus would be completely released, and then everything would come to an end. Although he might not be able to completely crush Shimin City, he could at least create an opportunity for Nangong City to win. Whether or not Nangong City would be able to control, it would depend on the people of Nangong City. If they wanted to rely on Xiao Yang's ability for everything, then it was self-evident what their final outcome would be. In the end, they would only be defeated, and there would be no other way. If they were willing to fight with all their might, then it was not impossible for them to fight for a chance of survival. When Shimin Dingtian saw that Xiao Yang did not seem to have any intention of paying attention to him, he became even more vicious. Now he could not wait to take action and kill Xiao Yang on the spot. How could this fellow be so arrogant? "Looks like you're very arrogant because of your talent," Shimin Dingtian said, and his voice became much more gloomy. At the same time, Shimin Dingtian also felt that if he killed Xiao Yang, it would be his greatest achievement in defeating Nangong City. By then, the voices that were against him in Shimin City would probably stop abruptly. Those people who did not have any foresight would also cut off many of their thoughts because of this. Many people in Shimin City had placed their bets on the second young master, Shimin Ban, because they felt that since the Shimin family had doted on him so much, it would be impossible for him to ascend the throne in the future. Moreover, although Shimin Dingtian was the eldest son, he had always been neglected. Therefore, many people would inevitably have some thoughts about this, and felt that there was an opportunity for them to take advantage of. If they could support the second young master to ascend the throne, then they would be meritorious, and the benefits they could obtain would be very considerable. As for the eldest young master, Shimin Dingtian, he had always been more arrogant and even somewhat unpopular. After all, geniuses were hard to get close to. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, smiled indifferently and said, "That's not the case. I just feel that your question is a little idiotic, so I don't want to bother with it." Hearing this, Shimin Dingtian's expression froze. This guy was really straightforward. Therefore, Shimin Dingtian was very angry. This guy seemed to be ignoring him, which was simply ridiculous. Where did he get such confidence from? Or perhaps, did he really think that he was invincible? No matter how one looked at it, it was extremely laughable. Such an action was indeed very laughable. However, since this guy dared to do this, he might have some great ability, so it was best to be careful. At least from the methods that the other party had used, one could tell how powerful he was. "I hope that you're as powerful in terms of battle," Shimin Dingtian frowned and said coldly. As long as he killed Xiaoyang, then there would be no one in Nangong City who could stop the Shimin City army. Shimin Dingtian didn't feel very happy with the conversation earlier, so he didn't want to continue. There was no meaning to it. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, smiled and glanced at the Moe Jade Lotus. Even if he did not look, he knew in his heart that he had already reached that stage. Under the interference of the Moe Jade Lotus, more than 10 martial emperors had already died. It must be said that Yu Tianjing's talent in battle was much weaker than Lu Xiang's. In a short period of time, Yu Tianjing was beaten to the point where he was forced to retreat. There were even more wounds on his body, which made him look rather pitiful. Yu Tianjing fell to the ground and suddenly hugged his head in pain, as if he had remembered something. After destroying the obstacle, Lu Xiang once again headed towards the Moe Jade Lotus. That was the main culprit of everything. If that strange thing could be broken, then the situation would once again return to their hands. Lu Xiang took a deep breath. At the same time, he also threw out a punch. It seemed that if this punch did not destroy the Black Lotus, he would not stop. However, in the next moment, a figure appeared in front of the Black Lotus and threw out a punch, causing Lu Xiang to retreat a few steps. Nangong Wenxin. Lu Xiang looked at the person standing in front of the lotus and said through gritted teeth. Chapter 3048. Nangong Wenxin had been hiding in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Of course, his father had instructed him not to make a move. If things went south, he had to leave this place as soon as possible and leave behind a chance for the Nangong clan. As the battle went on for so long, Nangong Wenxin saw some clues and knew that their chances of winning were very high. Therefore, he was also looking for a good opportunity to strike. Of course, Nangong Wenxin's target was Shimin Dingtian from Shimin City. However, Shimin Dingtian did not make a move. Now that Lu Xiang was attacking the Moe Jade Lotus, he had no choice but to show himself and stop him. If the Moe Jade Lotus was broken, then everything would be over. The only thing that Nangong City could rely on now was the Eerie Lotus. If Shimin City's powerful cultivators were not suppressed like this, how could Nangong City fight against them? Nangong Wenxin was very clear about this, so when he made his move, he did not hesitate at all. But now he still felt a little regretful. Originally, he thought that he had comprehended something new in the Cloud Valley and had successfully broken through to the next realm. With that, he would be able to compete with Shimin Dingtian and see who was truly comparable to Erjun. But now, everything seemed to have turned into a fantasy. It was completely useless. In the face of the big picture, sometimes one's little thoughts were insignificant. After all, this was a battle between Nangong City and Shimin City. It was not a personal grudge between Nangong Wenxin and Shimin Dingtian, nor was it a competition. Nangong Wenxian looked at her opponent with a faint smile on her face. His opponent was a 7th level cultivator. It was not a bad idea to fight against such a person. If he could kill him, then his battle record would increase by a lot. "Old bastard, die." Nangong Wenqing growled and charged towards Lu Xiang in the next moment. "Ignorant child, how dare you speak so arrogantly?" Lu Xiang coldly snorted and attacked at the same time. The battle could be said to be magnificent. Countless cultivators threw themselves into this battle, causing a storm of blood and a river of blood to flow. There were also many people who were continuously howling in pain. These tragic cries reverberated throughout the entire Cloud Valley. Just by listening to it, one would feel incomparably shocked. However, everyone was in the middle of it. At the same time, under the influence of the Mo Jade Lotus, many people's eyes had turned red from killing. How could they still care about this? This battle was like purgatory in the mortal world. Just a glance was enough to make one feel a chill in their hearts and be filled with terror. Although there were some busybodies who came closer to take a look, they immediately left as fast as they could. They knew that this was a contest between two giants. If they were to get involved, they would be in a lot of trouble in the future. No matter which side he helped, he would probably be hunted down by the other side in the future. The battle could be said to be extremely tragic. Many places were dyed red with blood. However, there was also a strange phenomenon. After some people's blood fell to the ground, it would quickly dry up. On the contrary, the land where the hot blood was spilled began to have an even thicker spiritual energy. This world seemed to be devouring their blood and souls. It was extremely terrifying. Right now, Xingtian was directly suppressing Lu Xinyu as if it was effortless. Lu Xinyu's injuries from the battle with Xiaoyang had not yet healed. Then he was ambushed by Xingtian. Because of this, he was at an absolute disadvantage. Therefore, against Xingtian, he could only take a beating. He couldn't even fight back. Even though Lu Xinyu's capabilities were not weak, Xingtian was not an ordinary person. Under such circumstances, it was not a problem for him to suppress his opponent. Plus, Xingtian had yet to use his special skills. For example, the powerful martial techniques he learned from the Horned Dragon's inheritance. Right now, Lu Xinyu's heart was full of bitterness. It was almost impossible for him to leave the battlefield now. Plus, if he dared to show any signs of wanting to escape, his opponent would use this mentality to plot against him. In the end, only death would await him. Because Lu Xinyu knew this too well, he was still fighting with all his might. He wanted to use 120% of his fighting abilities. Due to his injuries and the suppression from the Mo Jade Lotus, the capabilities he could display were very limited. Lu Xinyu's heart was filled with hatred. He should have seen through the flaw earlier, or else things wouldn't have turned out this way. But now that the general trend had been set, it was almost impossible to break it. Watching the heated battle, Lu Xinyu's heart was in even more pain. Many omnipotent cultivators from Shimen City were also being stopped by Nangongjiao and the others. It was almost impossible for them to break the stalemate. They could not be counted on. The people from Nangong City knew that this was a matter of life and death. Therefore, they were all fighting with their lives on the line and did not dare to slack off. The guests who wanted to continue being accepted by Nangong City were also fighting with their lives on the line. They felt that Nangong City's leader was giving them this opportunity. How could they let him down? Since they were going to die anyway, they might as well give it their all. Maybe they could find a way out of this hopeless situation. Staying alive was more important than anything else. Everything else could be put aside for now. This was a great opportunity to make a name for themselves. How could they miss it and let him go? Seeing that the casualties on his side were getting worse and worse, Shimen Dingtian could no longer hold it in. With a low cry, he charged toward Xiaoyang like a bolt of lightning. Since Lu Xiang had been stopped, he naturally could not touch the strange black lotus. Therefore, he could only attack and see if he could kill the person who was controlling it. Although the lotus's effects were heaven-defying, The one who was terrifying was the one who was controlling it. If it were not for Xiaoyang, the Mo Jade Lotus would only be a lotus and would not be able to affect them much. However, under Xiaoyang's control, everything had become a little different. Therefore, Lu Xiang had no choice but to do this. Seeing that Shimin Dingtian had suddenly charged towards him, Xiaoyang frowned. Initially, he thought that the other party would hesitate for a while. He did not expect the other party to charge towards him so decisively. Now that all of Nangong City's experts had surfaced and started fighting, it was almost impossible for them to take care of him. Chapter 3049. Of course, the powerhouses of Nangong City could also split their attention and come over. However, if they were to forcefully withdraw themselves and rush over, they would have to pay a huge price. Sometimes, the difference of a martial emperor could cause a subtle change in the entire battle situation. If such details were to increase, the situation would worsen to the most terrifying extent. In that case, the ones who would suffer would naturally be themselves. Shimin Dingtian's decisiveness had indeed caught Xiaoyang off guard. However, from the perspective of the battle situation, it was normal for him to do so. If he continued to watch from the sidelines and did not make a move as the finale, that would be abnormal. After all, Shimin City's disadvantage was very obvious. The longer this went on, the more losses they would suffer. They might even lose completely in the end. Xiaoyang snorted coldly and formed a seal with one hand. Immediately, the Thunder Fire Divine sword appeared out of thin air and shot towards his opponent with countless sword intents. Now, Xiaoyang wanted to control the Mo Jade Lotus to control some details. However, it was not a problem for him to split his attention to deal with Shimin Dingtian. Of course, he would not try to kill him. As long as he could delay him for a while, that would be enough. Shimin Dingtian's expression changed when he saw the divine sword flying towards him. He never thought that Xiaoyang would still be able to split his attention to deal with him. "I'd like to see how long you can stop me." Shimin Dingtian snorted coldly and said. At the same time, Shimin Dingtian's hands quickly formed a seal. Immediately, a powerful force was released from all parts of his body. Countless forces were like wind blades that swept out rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it was like a tornado that was invincible. Wherever it passed, there were even cultivators who were affected. Wherever it passed, there would be a few wounds on their bodies. Sensing the danger, many cultivators began to dodge quickly. After all, in a battle, if one was accidentally hit by an attack, it would lead to one's death. To be able to cultivate to such a level, as long as one did not rely on their family's resources, one would have experienced many things and could understand many things. It could be said that this was just common sense in battles. As long as one used their brains, they would be able to figure it out without much deviation. Countless wind blades shattered the fiery sword chi in an instant. Even the divine sword itself was sent flying uncontrollably. Seeing that the divine sword was unable to stop him, Shimin Dingtian snorted coldly with an expression that said, "That's all there is to it." Xiaoyang frowned slightly. With a casual grab, the divine sword returned to his hand. It seemed like he would not be able to stop Shimin Dingtian if he split his attention to deal with him. At the same time, Xiaoyang raised his head and looked at the Mo Jade Lotus again. Now he was also faced with a choice. Currently, he was like an existence that controlled the entire situation, and the Mo Jade Lotus was the medium for everything. As long as he could control it well, nothing would be a problem. But now, the situation was not so optimistic. Xiaoyang took a deep breath and tried his best to calm himself down. If he continued to place his focus on it, it would be difficult for him to withstand Shimin Dingtian's ferocious attacks. If that was the case, the situation would become even worse. Once he, Xiaoyang, fell, the situation of the battle would reach its most tragic state. One's decline and the other's rise was an unchanging principle. Since the general situation was created, one must cherish it. Soon after, Xiaoyang no longer hesitated because he had already seen through the situation. He was the general situation. If something happened to him, that would be the biggest problem. It seems like you are prepared to give up control of the MOE Jade Lotus and want to fight with me. Shimin Dingtian's lips curled slightly as he said proudly, as long as Xiaoyang was able to stop controlling that strange lotus, then the situation would naturally return to normal as he had expected. This was the best-case scenario. Everything would return to the starting point. At that time, their power would still be unstoppable, at least with the current state of Xiaoyang and the rest. They would definitely not be able to stop it. Xiaoyang smiled and nodded, saying, "Since you are so eager, let me have a taste of your skills." Whether Shimin Dingtian's abilities were bragged or built up using countless resources, it would be clear once they fought. Shimin City could be said to be rich and overbearing. If they could feed a useless second son to become a fourth-level martial emperor, why couldn't they do the same for a more talented eldest son? However, these were all just guesses and could not be taken seriously. I also want to see if you cannot disappoint me in a duel since you are so powerful in battle, Shimin Dingtian said with a smile. At the same time, Shimin Dingtian was determined. If he could kill Xiaoyang quickly, that would be the best thing. In this battle, the ability that Xiaoyang had displayed was indeed too shocking. The effect that he had displayed was even more shocking, to the point where it was difficult to accept. The damage done to Shimin City was even more terrifying. Many cultivators were affected by the MOE Jade Lotus, causing them to start killing each other, causing the people of Shimin City to panic. Not only did many of them have to deal with Nan Gongqing's opponents, they also had to be cautious of their own comrades, who might immediately attack them. It was because they had suffered losses before that they were so wary of him. Xiaoyang, on the other hand, smiled indifferently and formed a hand seal. At that instant, the MOE Jade Lotus seemed to be summoned as it began to spin rapidly. The black light dots that scattered down were like a dream. Then the MOE Jade Lotus began to drift with the wind and continued to scatter black dots, poisoning the entire battlefield. Xiaoyang had already done everything he could. Now he just had to let the lotus do its job. Seeing this, Shimin Dingtian gritted his teeth. In the next moment, he charged forward. Shimin Dingtian clearly knew that he could not allow the battle to continue any longer. Otherwise, if the eerie lotus continued for too long, the strength of Shimin City would be severely damaged. In the end, they might not even be able to match Nan Gongqing's strength and could only wait for their defeat. Shimin Dingtian did not want to see such a situation. Therefore, he had to kill Xiaoyang.